A determined visitor approaches a secluded cabin at dawn. A firm knock echoes, breaking the morning silence. Inside, the simple room remains still and unresponsive, but the sound finally rouses someone from a deep sleep. Our boy sits up, clearly annoyed by the early disturbance. Outside, the blonde woman waits with unwavering patience. He cracks the door open, his expression less than welcoming, and finds a formally dressed yet unfamiliar woman on his porch. Her face is revealed, filled with a solemn and urgent purpose. His sleepy annoyance instantly vanishes, replaced by pure shock. She struggles to speak, her face flushed with shame and desperation. The words finally come out. She has been expelled. Inside, our boy puts on a kettle, letting the news sink in. He glances back at his guest, a stark contrast to his humble home. Her radiant presence feels completely out of place in his quiet life. But a faint nostalgic smile touches his lips. He finally speaks, acknowledging how much his student has grown. This is Lilianne, his most beloved and promising disciple. His mind flashes back 20 years to their very first meeting. A younger Roge faced a dragon, calling it the perfect training partner. Standard Tuesday, I guess. The dragon unleashes a torrent of fire, but Roge stands his ground. With a powerful shout, he erects an all-attribute barrier. The little girl finds herself safe inside the magical shield, utterly bewildered. But Roge isn't just defending, he's already preparing his counterattack. He unleashes his spell Meteor Shooter, summoning a barrage of arcane stones. The dragon's eyes widen, clearly not expecting this level of resistance. The magical projectiles slam into the beast with overwhelming force. As the dust settles, the girl looks up, her world completely shaken. Roge approaches her, his aura still glowing, and asks if she's all right. He just smiles, explaining his spell like he didn't just break physics. He tells her that with enough study, she could wield such power too. But Roge notices the brief flicker of hope in her eyes quickly fade. Tears well up as she admits she's alone, with no way to even attend school. Her small hand clenches the tattered fabric of her clothes in desperation. A look of profound understanding crosses Roge's face. He reveals a shared past. He was an orphan, too, who studied magic just to survive. Now a master of all attributes, he extends a hand, promising she can do the same. He vows to teach her, and for the next 10 years they would travel together. The memory shifts forward to a brighter, older Lilianne, calling him her teacher. She declares her new purpose, to help others just as he once helped her. She had promised to show the entire world the wonder of his teachings. After they parted, Roge delved into ancient grimoires, eventually earning the title of sage. Hearing she'd become a royal court magician gave him the peace of mind to retire. The memory fades as he slides a warm cup across the table to her. He finally breaks the silence, asking her to explain what expulsion truly means. She confirms her high-ranking position as a guardian of national magical items, but her expression falters, the story taking a much darker turn. She was dismissed by the second prince, a revelation that leaves Roge utterly stunned. He can't comprehend it. He knows her talent far surpasses his own. He probes for the cause, certain it's a mistake, though he seems to be enjoying this a little too much. Lilianne admits there was no official reason given for her dismissal, but she has a sinking suspicion about what truly happened. She believes it's because she witnessed the second prince's affair. The story unfolds. Prince Thrush is engaged to a duke's daughter, but Lilianne accidentally stumbled upon the prince's secret rendezvous. To silence her, he had her fired, promoting his fiancée in her place. Roge's deadpan expression says everything about this royal mess. She can't believe her career was ruined for such a petty, personal reason. The faint amusement on Roge's face vanishes, replaced by cold focus. Overwhelmed by the injustice, she finally breaks down in tears. He questions the very structure of the kingdom, finding her dismissal completely unreasonable. But he quickly sets aside his anger, focusing on how to help his disciple. He offers a simple solution, to go on an adventure just like old times. The suggestion catches her completely off guard, her tears stopping instantly. Roge smiles, reminding her of the 10 years they spent traveling and laughing together. Lilianne is left speechless, overwhelmed by the nostalgic and heartfelt offer. For a moment, the warmth of their shared past fills the humble cabin. But then, Roge's smooth proposal hits a sudden internal speed bump. He realizes he's a 40-year-old asking a young woman to travel with him. Awkward. He assumes a successful 25-year-old woman would never agree to such a thing. His mind spirals, imagining her rejecting him with brutal, soul-crushing honesty. But her actual response leaves him utterly speechless. She confesses she's been dreaming of traveling with her teacher once again. Still in disbelief, he points to himself, asking if she's sure about this. Lilianne firmly corrects him. He's not a dreary old man, he's a cool one. The compliment washes over him, a golden wave of pure validation.
He's so moved he's on the verge of tears, thanking her for the kindness.
She reaffirms her devotion, declaring he'll always be the most important person to her. With their new adventure set, she reaches into her bag for something important. An ancient grimoire flies open, its pages humming with forgotten power. Roge looks down, noticing something has fallen from her bag. As he reaches for the open book, a faint magical light glows from its pages. A look of absolute soul-shattering terror flashes across Lilianne's face. She screams at her teacher, pleading with him not to look inside. But his curiosity is piqued, his fingers already touching the mysterious text. Overwhelmed by sheer panic, she scrambles to stop him. And in a desperate lunge, she clocks him right over the head with her staff. The legendary sage lies defeated on the floor of his own humble cabin. She frantically explains it's her personal diary, utterly mortified by the close call. Roge just laughs it off, admitting it's the first time he's been physically attacked with a staff. She's completely mortified, imagining the sheer horror of him reading her diary. Roge just notes her impressive collection, calling her diligent. Eager to move on, she quickly changes the subject back to their adventure. Roge thinks for a moment before remembering he has just the thing they need. He unfurls a large map, revealing the lands bordering the Kaiserland Empire. This is the Kingdom of Dolga, where he'd hoped to live out his days in peace. So much for that plan. But Lilianne's eyes light up as she points to a specific landmark on the map. She asks if he remembers the Goslash Volcano, a place that brings back memories. The fiery landscape of the volcano fills the frame, the very place they first met. She hesitates for a moment, a new proposal forming on her lips. She proposes they retrace the path of their very first journey together. Roge wholeheartedly agrees, deciding this adventure will be for her sake. He admits her nostalgic plan sounds far more exciting than his own. Her face lights up with pure, unadulterated joy at his acceptance. With their new quest decided, Roge heads off to prepare for the road. His eyes fall upon an old staff, a relic of his past life as an adventurer. He gently takes it down, apologizing for letting it gather dust in his retirement. Dressed in his old adventuring gear, the sage is officially back in business. But just as they're about to set off, he stops with a sudden thought. He asks her to wait, announcing a quick detour to the Empire. Seems someone needs a lesson in consequences. He calmly announces his plan to go scold the prince and his fiancée. The casual threat sends a wave of pure terror through Lilianne. She desperately grabs onto him, pleading for him to reconsider. She knows his scolding is a death sentence for the royals. He tries to reassure her it's just a little warning. Sure it is, buddy. In her panic, she presses against him, trying to physically stop him. The legendary sage is completely flustered by the unexpected contact. She argues his warning could accidentally level the entire empire. Defeated by her plea and his own embarrassment, he finally relents. Though the crisis is averted, Roge is still reeling from the encounter. Lilianne is deeply moved by his willingness to defend her honor. But her gratitude only makes the flustered sage more uncomfortable. He quickly changes the subject, eager to begin their journey. Raising his staff, Roge declares their destination, the Goslash Volcano. Lilianne looks on in awe, forever impressed by her teacher's power. She knows that large-scale teleportation requires a massive magic circle, but Roge developed his own logic, allowing him to cast it with a simple chant. She's thrilled to experience his legendary teleportation magic once again. As the world dissolves into light, he quietly speaks her name. He hopes this slow-paced journey will finally bring her some peace. They arrive at the Goslash Volcano, the air thick with oppressive heat. But for Lilianne, the sweltering air is a welcome wave of nostalgia. Roge decides a little climate control is in order, casting a cooling spell. A refreshing breeze envelops Lilianne, who marvels at her teacher's effortless power. He humbly explains it's just the result of endless training, which left him a 40-year-old sage with no girlfriend. Her attention is suddenly captured by a specific boulder in the distance. With a burst of magical energy, she gracefully leaps across the rocky terrain. She soars through the air, a picture of pure joy and freedom. Roge watches her, his expression a mixture of fondness and mild exhaustion. She lands beside the rock, reminding him this was where he first found her. She points to the ground where craters from his meteor shooter still scar the land. Raj is impressed, noting she was only 5 years old at the time. But she insists the memory is as vivid as if it were yesterday. She even remembers the specific colors of his all-attribute barrier. Her incredible memory of the event leaves him utterly speechless. As they reminisce, the memory of the dragon they faced looms over them. But while she's lost in nostalgia, Raj's expression shifts to alarm. Because their old training partner has returned, and it looks absolutely furious. The two adventurers snap back to reality, realizing their reunion is no longer private. And it seems they got so carried away reminiscing they forgot who else lives here. Roj tries to apologize, explaining they're just passing through. Lilianne screams for him to get away as the dragon prepares to attack. But it's too late. The beast unleashes a point-blank blast of fire. With a single hand, Roj holds back the inferno, his jaw clenched. The flames are deflected by a simple yet powerful magical shield. Lilianne realizes this isn't the legendary all-attribute barrier from their past. Roj casually explains he's conserving energy due to a lack of sleep. He admits his younger self would have been flashier, but he's too old for that now. The dragon just stares, clearly not sure what to make of this low-effort defense. As Roj wonders how to end this, Lilianne eagerly calls out to her teacher. She practically begs him to go all out, eager to learn more of his magic. Roj takes a moment, a plan already forming in his mind. He agrees, deciding this is the perfect chance for some rehabilitation. A vast and intricate magic circle erupts before the stunned dragon. But it's not just the dragon who's left completely speechless. Lilianne recognizes the ancient runes, realizing the sheer scale of his spell. He calmly utters the first part of the spell's name, Ancientia, and unleashes his signature move, the very same meteor shooter from their past. A torrent of arcane energy slams directly into the dragon's chest. But this time it's not a shower of rocks, it's a full-blown laser light show of doom. The sheer force of the spell sends Lilianne stumbling back in awe. As the dust settles, the dragon lies defeated, a testament to Roj's power. He calmly explains this was just a demonstration, not a death blow. He offers a gentle smile, as if he didn't just obliterate a mountain. The beast can only growl in submission, acknowledging the sage's overwhelming strength. With the lesson learned, the dragon wisely retreats into the sky. Roj notes the dragon seems smaller, hoping he didn't just bully a child. But his thoughts are interrupted by Lilianne, who is practically vibrating with excitement. She struggles to find the words, her mind racing to comprehend what she just saw. She finally asks the question burning in her mind. Has he mastered ancient magic? Raj scratches his head, casually admitting he might have forgotten to mention it. Lilianne is floored, demanding to know what he means by "a lot has happened." She asks if he's the first person in modern times to decipher the ancient grimoires. He confirms it was 5 years ago, a revelation that horrifies Lilianne. With renewed determination, she begs her former teacher to take her on as a student again. She grabs him, clarifying her desperate desire to learn ancient magic. She admits she thought she was finally catching up, only to be left in the dust once more. He agrees to teach her, but only if she lets go of him first. A classic escape tactic. Her pure, unbridled joy is a little too much for the flustered sage's heart. With the lesson plan set, the master and disciple continue their journey. Roj reflects on her childlike clinginess, which was cute then, but is a bit much now. He's worried their age gap might give people the wrong impression. A very wrong impression. They arrive at the town of Palimes, a place that holds many memories for them. She hopes they'll be remembered, and Roj assures her the people there were kind. But their welcome is less than warm, as a guard rudely dismisses the old man. Roj tries to play it cool, but the guard is clearly in no mood for travelers. He explains the heightened security is due to increased trade and suspicious activity. Their entry is denied based on Roj's less-than-official ID. Unemployed isn't a great look. Roj tries to clarify his profession, but only makes things worse by mentioning he makes drugs. Realizing he's dug himself into a hole, Lilianne prepares to take matters into her own hands. But the guard's tune changes instantly when Lilianne claims she's also unemployed. He explains her past as a royal court magician grants her passage, regardless of current status. With the guards now completely charmed, Lilianne prepares to make her case. She explains their master-disciple relationship, asking them to let Roj pass with her. The guards immediately accept her story about a journey to perfect their magic. With the gate now open, Lilianne thanks them as they finally enter the town. Roj is baffled by the effort, knowing he could have just teleported them past the wall. But a glance back reveals the guards' friendly smiles have turned to cold suspicion. Their inner monologue reveals a much less wholesome interpretation of their relationship. Roge realizes their polite demeanor was just a mask for their judgmental thoughts. Roge worries he looks suspicious, even considering shaving his beard. The scene cuts away to the Kaiserland Empire, inside the second prince's private chambers. Prince Thrush sits intimately with a purple-haired woman, looking out the window. He and his fiancée, Isabel, are celebrating Lilianne's recent expulsion. Isabel expresses her relief that the eyesore is finally gone from her sight. The prince embraces her, declaring he would do anything for her love. But behind the facade, his eyes are cold, his thoughts purely political. He only fired Lilianne to appease Isabel and secure their engagement. His true motive is even pettier. This is punishment for Lilianne rejecting him. Isabel then reveals her own ambition, asking to be made the new chief court magician. Prince Thrush agrees, confident his message has been clearly sent. Isabel whispers words of devotion, sealing their manipulative pact. But their private celebration is suddenly cut short by an interruption. A servant announces an important visitor, Minister Pelvis from the Kingdom of Dolga. Isabel immediately sees an opportunity, asking to be introduced to the influential figure. The prince explains the minister is here to inspect the Empire's magical defenses. With a smug grin, she reveals she's arranged it, eager to debut as the new chief. Prince Thrush simply smiles, indulging his fiancée's naked ambition. He internally notes her assertiveness, content to let her have this small victory. But his thoughts turn darker, revealing who truly holds power in the kingdom. Him. Prince Thrush and Isabel rush to greet their important guest. The visitor, Minister Pelvis, acknowledges the prince with a knowing smile. After a formal welcome, Pelvis's gaze shifts to the woman beside the prince. He seems momentarily confused, as if he was expecting someone else entirely. Isabel steps forward, introducing herself with a dramatic, rose-filled flourish. The prince proudly presents her as his fiancée and the new chief court mage. Minister Pelvis finds this development strange, a detail that doesn't quite add up. He notes that the reputation of the Empire's chief mage preceded her. But the name he recalls is Lilianne, forcing the prince to invent a lie about her retirement. Pelvis laments the loss of such a talent, a comment that clearly irritates Isabel. Isabel smugly accepts the title, promising a performance worthy of her new rank. Minister Pelvis offers a polite apology, masking his true thoughts on the matter. The prince leads them to a vast chamber, revealing the Empire's massive golem army. Pelvis looks on, genuinely impressed by the sheer scale of their military might. Prince Thrush boasts that each golem can wield magic of every known attribute. He explains their tiered system, with larger golems handling all-ground combat. Pelvis offers his praise, but the prince internally scoffs at the minister's awe. He continues his intimidation, mentioning even larger 55-meter golems at the border. With a sly grin, the prince puts Isabel on the spot, asking for a demonstration. She eagerly accepts the challenge, ready to prove her power to their guest. Isabel places a hand on the golem, channeling her magic into its core. Minister Pelvis continues his polite praise for their impressive military might. But his words strike a nerve when he credits the king and the first prince. Prince Thrush's smile tightens, his silence speaking volumes. He clarifies that with his father ill and brother away, he made the appointment. With a chilling smile, he reminds the minister who's currently running the show. Pelvis offers a simple, almost patronizing acknowledgement of the prince's claim. The prince quickly smooths things over, accepting the minister's feigned apology. But Pelvis's internal thoughts reveal he sees the prince as a difficult, arrogant youth. Their tense exchange is cut short as Isabel announces her preparations are complete. Minister Pelvis looks on with keen interest while the prince smirks confidently. Isabel begins her demonstration, commanding the massive golem with a simple gesture. The automaton responds instantly, raising its arms with surprising precision. She basks in the minister's apparent awe, her performance going exactly as planned. But Pelvis's sharp eye catches a detail, asking about the intricate magic circle. The prince quickly intervenes, hiding Isabel's ignorance behind classified information. Pelvis plays along, offering more praise while the prince accepts it graciously. With the demonstration seemingly over, they prepare to discuss more formal matters. But the guard's calm demeanor shatters as they notice something terribly wrong. The golem's eye glows with a menacing light, its movements no longer controlled. The guards scream in terror, urging Minister Pelvis to get back at once. The prince and Isabel are frozen in shock, while Pelvis remains utterly confused. As the golem's hand descends, Pelvis calmly asks what the rush is about. So much for diplomatic immunity. Later, the prince tries to downplay the incident, calling it a little accident. He furiously reminds her that only Pelvis's quick-thinking servants prevented a disaster. Isabel argues it was a minor miscalculation, but the prince knows they were one step away from war. Losing his patience, the prince silences her with a sharp stomp on her foot. He grabs her, questioning if she's ever handled national defense magic before. He accuses her of letting Lilianne handle all the real work, a truth that hits her hard. Utterly humiliated, Isabel can only tremble in silence, her arrogance completely shattered. Isabel desperately tries to defend herself, but the prince silences her. His anger gives way to pure panic as he realizes his entire scheme is at risk. Meanwhile, back in Palim's, Lilianne's attention is captured by something new. She's completely mesmerized by a stall selling a popular drink called tapioca. With childlike excitement, she rushes off to try it, leaving Raj behind. He realizes her demanding job left her completely out of touch with modern trends. Roj takes in the bustling town, noting how much it's changed over the years, but his quiet reflection is interrupted by Lilianne's return. She's clearly not a fan of the chewy drink, her face a mask of pure disgust. As she happily skips away for ice cream, he sips the drink, amused by her childish side. But his brain short-circuits, realizing he just committed an indirect kiss. His panic is interrupted by Lilianne, who happily returns with ice cream for them both. Now it's her turn to blush, worried people will think they're on a date. And from a distance, a woman's thoughts confirm their worst fears. Her voice suddenly cuts through their awkwardness, calling out to them. The scene shifts to the local adventurers guild, a familiar haunt from their past. Inside, they're greeted by an old friend, a woman named Sarah. She welcomes them with a warm, booming laugh, clearly happy to see them. Roj recalls she was once the guild's beloved receptionist who looked after Lilianne. He's surprised to learn she's now the guild master, having taken over after the last one retired. Lilianne jokes about the old guild master, unknowingly hitting Roj's age insecurity. Sarah asks about their plans, sparking a nostalgic idea in Lilianne's mind. She eagerly proposes they take on a quest for old times' sake. But Raj feels out of place among the guild's much younger adventurers. Sarah and Lilianne quickly reassure him, insisting the sage is always welcome. The master and disciple share a quiet, thoughtful moment, the idea settling in. They approach the quest board, a familiar sight from their shared past. Lilianne's eyes light up as she spots the perfect nostalgic mission. Sarah leans in, curious to see what has caught her friend's attention. It's a simple, ranky goblin subjugation quest. For old times' sake. Sarah points out it's just a beginner's quest, but Lilianne is perfectly fine with it. The guildmaster smiles, realizing it's because it reminds her of their very first mission. But a mischievous thought crosses Sarah's mind, leaving Roj completely puzzled. She leans in with a sly grin, asking if they'd be willing to do her a little favor. With a flick of her wrist, she points to a completely different request on the board. Their eyes widen as they read the new mission. A rank A cave dragon subjugation. The quest details a fearsome, crystal-covered beast known for its violent temper. Sarah explains with a weary sigh that the dragon has been terrorizing the local area. Roj accepts without a second thought, much to the guildmaster's utter disbelief. But Lilianne just smiles, confident that for her teacher, this is just another Tuesday. Sarah can only laugh, admitting they're an extraordinary pair. As she prepares the official quest seal, other adventurers whisper in disbelief. But Roj is unfazed, eager to set out on their mission before nightfall. Their departure is cut short by an obnoxious shout from the entrance. A trio of adventurers bursts in, led by a cocky, red-haired swordsman. He immediately singles out Raj, demanding to know why an old man is here. Roj's polite smile falters as the young adventurer gets right in his face. He accuses Roj of ruining the guild's reputation and orders him to leave. Guess someone missed the memo on respecting your elders. Roj tries to politely excuse himself, chalking it up to youthful arrogance. But the arrogant trio isn't finished, blocking their path to the exit. But Roj's attempt to leave is cut short by a sharp command. The red-haired swordsman grabs Lilianne, introducing himself as Loudboy. He offers her money, suggesting she ditch the old man for someone better. His proposal is met with a swift and brutal elbow to the stomach. Her eyes swirl with fury as she delivers a chilling warning not to touch her. The entire guild falls silent, watching the confrontation with bated breath. The once cocky adventurer screams in terror, completely unnerved by her reaction. It seems his unwanted attention has awakened a very dark and familiar trauma. Loudboy clutches his gut, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. But Lilianne has already dismissed him, turning back to her teacher with a smile. Undeterred, Loudboy gets back in Roge's face, demanding his attention. He grills Roge about his relationship with Lilianne and his age. The answer sends him into a fit of laughter, accusing Roge of being a sugar daddy. But a sharp voice cuts through the mockery, demanding silence. Lilianne steps forward, her fist clenched, calling out his blatant disrespect. Roge can only watch as his disciple moves to defend him. She passionately declares that her teacher is a kind man whom she deeply respects. But then she turns on Roge, scolding him for being too passive. She's frustrated that he just stood there and let them mock him for his age. Overwhelmed by her fierce loyalty, Roge can only offer a flustered apology. He finally admits his true fear, that their age gap would make her uncomfortable. Lilianne is taken aback, realizing his self-deprecation was all for her sake. The two quickly reconcile, their mutual respect overriding the awkwardness. But their heartfelt moment is completely lost on the fuming Loudboy. He interrupts, accusing them of getting lost in their own little world. He then turns to Sarah, demanding to know their destination. A sinister grin spreads across his face as he learns of their mission. With a new plan in mind, he turns back to confront the sage. He throws down a challenge, a race to see who can kill the dragon first, because that's a totally normal thing to do. His own companion tries to talk him down, reminding him of the monster's reputation. His companion agrees, figuring the quest can't be that hard if an old man got it. Loudboy turns to Lilianne, vowing to defeat her teacher to prove his superiority. He sneers that chasing after an old man is a complete waste of her time. He then raises the stakes, declaring Lilianne will be his prize if he wins. Real charming. But Lilianne erupts, fiercely defending her master's honor and character. Later, Loudboy's party heads out, with him mocking those who blindly follow others. He scoffs that a weak master can only produce an equally weak disciple. They soon arrive at Zoda's cave, finding it swarming with low-level goblins. Loudboy smirks, preparing a simple spell he deems more than enough for the task. Back at the guild, Sarah explains the source of his arrogance. He's a nobleman's son, and his family funds the guild, which explains everything. She apologizes for the trouble, but they wave it off, ready to leave. But she asks them to keep an eye on the arrogant trio, fearing for their lives. Roge agrees, hoping the young adventurer's skill matches his ego. But Lilianne can't understand why her teacher would help such a disrespectful person. They soon arrive at the cave, but something feels off. The entrance is strangely quiet, with no sign of the goblin horde. Lilianne spots the reason. The goblins are all fast asleep. Or more accurately, they've been completely knocked out cold. She senses a faint magical trace, deciding to investigate the strange scene. Roge deduces that only an A-rank spell could have caused this level of incapacitation. As they venture deeper, Lilianne's faith in her master remains unshakable. She casts a simple spell, summoning a gentle orb of light to guide their way. Roge looks on with a proud smile, impressed by her elegant display of magic. He compliments her on the efficiency of her spell, noting how much she's improved. Lilianne blushes, happily giving all the credit to her teacher's guidance. Roge suggests they check for stragglers as they move deeper into the cave. He warns that an undiscovered nest could pose a serious problem for them. But their path is suddenly blocked by a very awake and very angry goblin horde. Roge realizes Loudboy simply ignored them, leaving the cleanup crew to handle it. So considerate. But Lilianne steps forward, confidently declaring she'll handle this herself. The goblins screech, charging forward with mindless, feral rage. In an instant, the master and disciple find themselves completely surrounded. With a determined shout, she unleashes a barrage of fire arrows. The spell erupts in a storm of fire, decimating the goblin ranks with ease. Roge watches in awe, impressed by the incredible precision of her spell. He notes her flawless execution, casting multiple spells without any wasted energy. The sage can only smile, his heart swelling with pride for his disciple. She turns back with a triumphant smile, announcing the path is clear. He praises her efficiency, but she just blushes, happy to handle it herself. They venture deeper, into a cavern glittering with eerie purple crystals. Lilianne worries about Loudboy, sensing they're approaching the dragon's lair. She then asks a simple question. Why not use a detection spell to find them? Roge pauses, the obvious solution having completely slipped his mind. He admits his oversight, wondering if he's losing his touch, but Lilianne quickly shuts that down. Embarrassed, the sage decides it's time to prove he's still got it. He unleashes a powerful detection spell, sending a wave of magic through the cave. The energy spreads like a web, mapping every corner of the cavern in an instant. And it immediately locates Lodboy's party, who are running for their lives. Because the cave dragon is right on their tail, and it does not look happy. Lodboy grits his teeth, channeling what little magic he has left into his blade. He unleashes the A-rank spell, Coma Sleep, with a desperate shout. The powerful magic flares brightly before fading from his hand. He realizes he wasted all his energy on the goblins. So much for saving it for the boss. And right on cue, the cave dragon lunges forward with a furious roar. He rushes to his companion's side, trying to shield him from the attack. But it's too late. His friend lies battered and unconscious on the cavern floor. From a safe distance, Rouge and Lilianne watch the chaos unfold. They peer into the lair, hoping the arrogant trio is still alive. Rouge can only wonder what kind of mess these kids have gotten themselves into. The screams of the arrogant adventurers echo through the cavern. His companion is down, bleeding and unconscious on the cave floor. Lodboy turns back, his face a mask of panic and grim determination. He knows he's nearly out of magic, but he has to do something. With a desperate grunt, he channels the last of his energy into a healing spell. The cave dragon watches with amusement as he prepares his final move. A wave of green light erupts from his hands, meant to save his friends. But his control slips, and the spell explodes with far too much power. Rouge and Lilianne are stunned as the kid's spell goes completely off the rails. Lodboy realizes his fatal error. He's about to give the boss a full health restore. The dragon smirks as the healing energy washes over it. This is not going according to plan. Utterly spent, Lodboy can only tell his companions to save themselves. His friends look on in horror, calling out his name in disbelief. He shoves them back, vowing to buy them enough time to escape. He curses his own weakness, frustrated by his repeated pathetic failures. A memory surfaces of a younger boy, convinced of his own special destiny. But once again, his arrogance has led him straight into disaster. Tears stream down his face as he finally admits his own foolishness. But just as the dragon strikes, a massive magical barrier erupts from nowhere. Lodboy and his party are stunned, completely baffled by the sudden intervention. Rouge stands before them, his expression calm as he erects the barrier. He appears from nowhere, a beacon of power before the stunned adventurers. Lodboy can only stare, recognizing the very man he'd just mocked. Rouge turns with a smile, asking if the barrier was an S-rank spell. He points out that for someone so knowledgeable, he sure missed the memo on the dragon. Lilianne calls down from above, but Rouge calmly assures her everything is fine. The name Rouge echoes in Lodboy's mind, a piece of a puzzle clicking into place. A faint smile plays on Rouge's lips as the young adventurer connects the dots, but their reunion is cut short as the dragon unleashes a devastating energy beam. The attack slams into a wall of shimmering crystal, held back by an unseen force. The cavern walls explode inward, trapping the arrogant trio in a cage of crystal. The dragon unleashes a furious roar, and Rouge deadpans that it was a little scary. He decides it's time to stop playing games and end this fight for good. A glowing magic circle forms beneath him, launching him high into the air. He gracefully leaps over the beast, which can only watch in confusion. A vast, complex magic circle materializes behind him in mid-air. His eyes glow with power as he utters the first word, Ancientia. Lodboy is left speechless, witnessing a level of magic beyond his wildest dreams. A brilliant laser of pure arcane power erupts, slamming into the dragon's chest. The dragon recoils in pain, its crystal armor no match for the sage's power. The dragon crashes to the ground, defeated, as the three young adventurers stare in absolute silence. Lodboy can only stammer in disbelief, his mind struggling to process what just happened. He questions if it's really over, unable to believe the beast was felled in a single blow. Lilianne rushes to her master's side, praising a feat even S-rank adventurers couldn't manage. Lodboy listens, his arrogance shattered as Rouge casually claims he just got lucky. Finally finding his voice, the young adventurer calls out to the man he just mocked. He points a trembling finger, demanding to know if he is the legendary Sage Rouge. Rouge is caught off guard as Lodboy recounts his feat of repelling a demon invasion. This is news to Lilianne, who turns to her teacher, stunned by the revelation. Rouge sheepishly admits he kept it quiet to avoid bragging, much to his disciples' shock. Lilianne is mortified, admitting she was too buried in work to even read the news. As Rouge sweats under the sudden spotlight, Lodboy prepares to formally introduce himself. He declares himself Lodboy Humberstone, heir to a noble house. The name rings a bell, and a distant memory clicks into place for Roge. He recognizes him as the kid he saved years ago, a fact Lodboy confirms with a deep, grateful bow. The scene flashes back 20 years to the source of this unexpected connection. A young Lodboy was on his deathbed, but Roge's intervention saved his life. He watched his hero walk away, vowing to one day become just like him. That single moment fueled a lifetime of relentless magical training. But back in the present, his face is a mask of shame and regret. He explains that despite his efforts, his attack magic never grew stronger. His only talent was healing, a far cry from the power he idolized. He eventually gave up on his dream, a confession that hangs heavy in the air. Overcome with emotion, he admits his arrogance was just a mask for his insecurity. The dramatic, tear-filled apology leaves Roge completely flustered. But his companions rush to his defense, insisting he's a good person, just a little dense. They reveal his deepest secret. He's been desperate to become Roge's student. The entire party bows in unison, pleading for the sage to forgive their leader. Roge tries to defuse the situation, insisting he's not angry at all. Lilianne seems unconvinced. He offers some sage advice, reminding the young man that everyone has their own unique talents. Roge sees potential in the young man's healing magic, suggesting a different path for him. He gives them a quick lesson on mana control, a lecture they seem to be taking to heart. Overwhelmed, Lodboy grabs Roge, vowing to follow him for the rest of his life. He then declares himself Roge's #1 disciple, sparking an instant rivalry with Lilianne. Roge sighs, realizing he's somehow just acquired a new, very loud apprentice. Later that evening, the group returns to the town of Palemes. News of the dragon's defeat has spread, and the entire town is celebrating. The adventurers who once doubted him now toast to his incredible victory. They all admit they pegged him as a washed-up old man. Gee, thanks for the vote of confidence. But Lilianne isn't having it, fiercely defending her teacher from their backhanded compliments. Lodboy explodes, trying to teach the ignorant adventurers a lesson in respect. He proudly declares himself the sage's second apprentice, a title that earns him nothing but scorn. But Lilianne quickly puts him in his place, scolding him for his newfound arrogance. From the counter, Sarah teases Roge about his growing fan club. Lilianne reminds Lodboy that he's still on thin ice for his earlier behavior. He earnestly explains he only wanted to defend his new master's reputation. He mentions the demon invasion, a heroic deed that hits Lilianne like a ton of bricks. The rivalry ignites as Lilianne declares she knows the sage better than anyone. She then proceeds to list his most embarrassing secrets, much to Roge's horror. Sarah gleefully adds to the list, confirming the legendary sage's greatest weakness. Lilianne clings to him, demanding he confirm her status as his #1 apprentice. She insists she's the most special to him, the one who truly understands him. Lodboy tries to calm her down, but she tearfully declares him second place. Roge realizes the truth as a companion confirms she's had 5 mugs of ale. As the chaos continues, Sarah leans in with a question she's been dying to ask. She bluntly asks what his relationship with Lilianne really is. The question of whether they're a couple makes Roge spit out his drink in shock. He furiously denies it, reminding them he's practically raised her since she was 5. But the other adventurers point out that her feelings seem to have changed over time. Sarah explains that after all these years, it wouldn't be strange if she fell for him. Roge explodes, furiously denying the claim as disrespectful to Lilianne. The others can only watch as the sage completely loses his composure. He can't wrap his head around it, having only ever seen her as a daughter. In his mind, she's meant to marry someone her own age, like Lodboy, but even that thought feels wrong, leaving him a mess of conflicting emotions. As the night deepens, the rowdy celebration finally comes to an end. Lodboy and his party are completely passed out on the guild floor. Lilianne herself has drifted off, sleeping peacefully in a nearby chair. Roge gently drapes his cloak over her as a quiet calm settles over the room. He smiles, admitting to himself it's been ages since things were this lively. He notices her bag is open and decides to close it for her. But as he reaches for it, his eyes catch a glimpse of something inside. He sees a book with his own name written clearly on the page. The horrifying realization dawns on him. This must be her diary. A cold sweat breaks out as he fights the urge to look closer. All the while, Lilianne sleeps on, completely unaware of his internal crisis. He forces himself to look away, determined to respect her privacy. But fate intervenes as a book tumbles out, falling open on the floor. He tries not to look, but his gaze is drawn to the open pages. How's that for a sign from the universe? His name is written everywhere, and he desperately tries to rationalize it as simple note-taking. He tries to convince himself she's just a very diligent student, but the words on the page tell a very, very different story. This isn't a notebook, it's a full-blown romantic fantasy starring him. And the author of his current nightmare sleeps soundly just a few feet away. The sage's brain completely short-circuits and he face-plants onto the table. He's spiraling, utterly mortified by what he's just discovered. In a moment of pure desperation, he begs Sarah for guidance. But the guildmaster can only offer him a look of profound disappointment. She admits that while he probably deserves this, she'll hear him out. She reminds him she saw this coming, but Raj is still in denial about his age. Sarah explains that to Lilianne. He's a master and a father figure, but she believes Lilianne fell for him simply as a person, not because of his titles. The sage can only sweat, his brain struggling to reboot after this revelation. Sarah sighs, preparing to deliver her final, crucial piece of advice. She tells him not to make any rash decisions until he knows how to handle her feelings, and she delivers a stern warning. If he hurts Lilianne, he'll have to answer to her. After all, he's the one who crossed a line by reading her private thoughts. She's not wrong. The next morning, a blissfully unaware Lilianne waves a cheerful goodbye to the town. Sarah and the rest of the guild see them off with warm smiles and well wishes. But Raj looks back, his mind still reeling from the emotional minefield he just discovered. He's lost in thought, wondering how he's supposed to handle this new reality. He feels completely inadequate, questioning why she would ever see him that way. He reminds himself this is her trip, made possible by her reputation, not his. Her voice snaps him out of his spiral, and he can barely hide his panic. She offers to rest, and he quickly insists he's fine, already failing at playing it cool. He calls her name, and she turns with a smile that could power a small city. He finally asks the question weighing on his mind. Is she truly enjoying this trip? He awkwardly clarifies, hoping all the chaos hasn't ruined her chance to unwind. But her answer is a radiant, unequivocal declaration that she's having the time of her life. Her face is a picture of pure bliss, leaving no doubt about her feelings. Her pure joy only deepens his confusion, leaving him lost in thought. He forces a smile, agreeing that her happiness is all that matters. But their close bond is a little too much for their new tag-along. Even Loudboy's own party members are surprised by his sudden change in attitude, because it turns out Loudboy has decided to join their journey, much to Lilianne's fury. Roge decides to take it in stride, figuring he'll start with the basics for his new student. But Lilianne is already having a hard time sharing her master's attention. She decides to show off, demonstrating a complex space storage spell. Both Roge and Loudboy watch in awe as she effortlessly manipulates the items. Loudboy is blown away, but Lilianne humbly gives all the credit to her teacher. With a flourish, Lilianne reveals a perfect picnic, leaving her companions speechless. Roge is flustered, realizing she's always prepared for his every possible need. She then presents her pièce de résistance, a special bread she calls Roge bread. A closer look reveals the bread is shaped like his face. Her diary is starting to make a lot more sense. Both Roge and Loudboy are completely horrified by this edible shrine. But Lilianne is lost in her own world, basking in the glory of her creation. Roge forces a smile while Loudboy complains her affection is a bit heavy. As Roge eagerly reaches for the food, Lilianne happily offers to serve them. She's thrilled they like it, already vowing to bake a life-sized version next time. He takes a bite, declaring it delicious, while Loudboy is still processing the situation. Loudboy takes a hesitant bite of the bread shaped like his new master. But he's immediately won over, while Roge feels like he's witnessing a very weird form of cannibalism. After their unsettling picnic, the group continues their journey toward Volcano village. Lilianne recalls visiting often, wondering how the villagers she knew are faring. But Roge's expression darkens, his words hinting at a grim possibility. His ominous tone leaves both Lilianne and Loudboy completely confused. Without another word, Roge picks up the pace, urging them to hurry. He explains that something feels deeply wrong with the forest around them. The trees are blackened and dying, a corruption that wasn't here years ago. A horrifying thought strikes Roge as he realizes what this blight could mean. Roge's worst fears are confirmed as he identifies the source of the corruption. The air itself is thick with a deadly miasma, choking the life from the land. He can't understand how this could happen, a plague this severe so close to civilization. Inside, a group of medics argues over a difficult choice: containment or rescue. A man named Bernard is reminded of his duty as part of the kingdom's medical corps, but he argues their true purpose is to contain the miasma, saving everyone outside the village. He orders his subordinate, Constanze, to begin erecting the containment barrier. Roge rushes forward, trying to stop them before they seal the village off for good. The medics warn him away, but Raj quickly announces his authority as the sage. The name catches Bernard off guard, and Lilianne introduces herself to add to their credibility. Roge steps forward, asking for details on the miasma and offering his help. Bernard explains the cause is a mystery. The plague simply appeared without warning. He describes its horrifying effects, a cellular decay that makes bodies crack and bleed. To make matters worse, he admits there's no known cure or counter magic. Lilianne refuses to accept this, insisting they have to save the villagers now. But Bernard coldly dismisses her plea as unacceptable. He announces the palace's official decision: the village will be sealed off. The trio is stunned into silence by the brutal finality of his words. He repeats the order, leaving no room for argument. So much for due process. Once the barrier is deployed, he explains, entry and exit will be impossible for anyone. Roge grabs the medic, refusing to believe King Sieg would issue such a cruel order. He desperately pleads for just a little more time, certain he can find a solution. But Bernard explodes with rage, grabbing the sage and telling him to face reality. Lilianne and Loudboy can only watch, stunned by the medic's raw fury. The other medics step in, defending their leader's impossible, heartbreaking choice. Bernard explains that he accepted this grim duty for a very specific reason. He roars that this is to protect everyone outside the village, including them. The weight of that responsibility hits Roge, silencing his protests for a moment. His disciples look on, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. Just then, Constanze reports that the barrier magic circle is ready to be activated. But Roge's hand shoots out, stopping the medic with a desperate shout. He admits Bernard's logic is sound, but he simply cannot back down. He passionately declares that just as Bernard has a duty, he has one as a mage. Bernard listens, acknowledging that this is a long shot with no guarantee of success. Roge grabs him, pleading for him to understand that he can't just stand by and watch. He reveals his personal connection to the village, begging for just 10 minutes. The medic's resolve seems to waver as he considers the sage's desperate plea. Lilianne steps forward, adding her own voice to the desperate request. She insists her master has cured countless impossible illnesses before. But Bernard snaps, reminding her this isn't a disease, it's a fast-spreading plague. But Lilianne recalls something from an old magic book, a potential solution for her master. She suggests a form of ancient magic, a miasma protector, stunning the medics. Loudboy explains it's a lost art, capable of recreating impossible technologies. Lilianne adds that as far as she knows, only Roge is capable of using it now. With a determined look, she insists it's a chance they absolutely have to take. The other medics join in, begging Bernard to reconsider for the villagers' sake. Bernard's fist trembles, his cold resolve finally beginning to crack. His own subordinate looks to him, her eyes pleading for him to listen. He turns to Roge, his voice filled with desperation, asking if he can really save them. Lilianne and Loudboy beam with pride, their faith in their master never stronger. The other medics look to their leader, their hope rekindled by the sage's words. Bernard admits he has no idea if this will work, his voice heavy with doubt. But Roge roars back that he refuses to give up on the people inside. Moved by his conviction, Bernard finally relents, vowing to try everything he can. He gives the sage a strict time limit, exactly 10 minutes. Lilianne and Loudboy celebrate the small victory as Bernard warns him not to be late. Without a second to waste, Roge unleashes the legendary Ancientia Protect spell. No pressure, of course. A golden aura envelops him as he channels the ancient, forgotten magic. Bernard stares in awe, feeling the intricate power of the protective barrier. With the spell active, Roge tells the medic to lead the way, ready to face the plague. Lilianne tries to follow, but Roge orders her to stay put for her own safety. The female medic, Constanze, watches her leader with a worried expression. Loudboy confirms his team is on standby, ready to activate the barrier at a moment's notice. Roge and Bernard rush into the desolate village, leaving a concerned Lilianne behind. She clenches her fist, feeling utterly powerless to help her master. Loudboy approaches, asking if there's anything he can do to help her. His usual arrogance is gone, replaced by a look of genuine concern. Lilianne stares into the distance, her mind racing as she considers her next move. A flicker of resolve appears in her eyes as she comes to a decision. She turns to Loudboy, ordering him to assist with the barrier preparations. Looks like she's in charge now. Bernard explains the sick have been gathered inside the village church. The two men push open the heavy doors, stepping into the heart of the plague. But nothing could have prepared Roge for the horrifying sight that awaits them. The entire church floor is covered with the bodies of the sick and dying. Their faces are covered in black lesions, their breathing shallow and pained. The miasma causes their very skin to crack and bleed, a truly gruesome sight. Bernard admits their medical efforts have been futile, only able to slow the bleeding. Roge leans in for a closer look, his mind racing to understand the plague's nature. He questions Bernard's theory, wondering why cellular separation would cause cracking. He realizes something is missing. The symptoms just don't add up. A sudden, horrifying realization dawns on Roge's face. He decides to use another ancient spell, a full diagnostic scan. A complex magical interface materializes, analyzing the patient's vitals. Bernard is stunned by the display, demanding to know what Roge has found. Roge explains it's a detailed report written in an ancient language. The scan reveals the true cause. Runaway nanomachines are destroying their cells. You know, just your average Tuesday. Bernard curses, completely lost on how to fight this unknown enemy. But Roge looks up, a newfound confidence in his eyes. He explains that if it's nanomachines, there's a specific counterspell. With a triumphant smile, he declares that they can save everyone after all. Roge focuses his power, uttering the words to another ancient spell. Nano-absorb. A wave of brilliant blue energy erupts from him, washing over the entire church. The energy seems to target the miasma, drawing it out from the villagers' bodies. Bernard watches in disbelief as the plague is literally pulled from the sick. Roge corrects him, explaining he's not removing miasma, but the nanomachines themselves. He gives a quick lesson on ancient tech, explaining their original, helpful purpose. But after centuries, he theorizes, their programming has gone completely haywire. Meanwhile, outside, Lilianne recalls the first time she met her incredible teacher. She remembers it wasn't just childish admiration. Everyone adored and thanked him. From the very beginning, she knew he was a hero who brought happiness to others. More than just a hero, she admits, he was the one who made her happy. This happiness was shadowed by a childhood fear of being abandoned again. Even now, she feels insecure, struggling to keep up with his incredible power. Her greatest fear has always been the day he would leave her behind. Now, being told to simply wait feels like a confirmation of her uselessness. All she's ever wanted is to be an equal, standing proudly by his side. But she worries that to him, she's still just a little girl following in his shadow. The thought of him walking away, leaving her behind, fills her with terror. Overwhelmed by her own feelings of inadequacy, she begins to break down. Loudboy, ever the gentleman, suggests a less emotional and more direct approach. Lilianne stares back, her expression a perfect blend of annoyance and disbelief. She dismisses him completely, deciding it was a mistake to confide in an idiot. But Loudboy cuts right to the chase, accusing her of loving her teacher as a man. He calls her out, asking how she can deny it after writing so many fantasies about him. Lilianne freezes, her mind going completely blank with the shock of being exposed. She stammers, demanding to know how he could possibly know about her private thoughts. He reminds her of the previous night, when she drunkenly read her diary entries aloud to him. In fact, she apparently ordered him to memorize the first 2 chapters. Talk about oversharing. The horrifying memory comes flooding back, and Lilianne's brain completely short-circuits. She collapses in utter despair, convinced her life is officially over. Loudboy offers his own brand of wisdom, which is somehow worse than silence. But their argument is cut short, as Constanze points toward the village. The medics watch in disbelief as the dark miasma is pulled from the village. A swirling vortex of light now hangs over the entrance, a sign of the sage's power. Lilianne's despair vanishes, replaced by stunned silence. Loudboy celebrates, his faith in the sage completely validated. But Lilianne seems unimpressed by his cheering, her eyes fixed on the display. A small, knowing smile spreads across her face. She never doubted him for a second. Just then, Roge emerges from the village, calling out to his students. Constanze immediately approaches, asking for a report on the situation inside. Roge emerges with a triumphant smile, announcing he's removed the cause. The medics, led by Constanze, are completely floored by the news. The entire group erupts in a massive cheer, celebrating the impossible victory. But Roge quickly brings them back to reality, reminding them the villagers still need medical care. Constanze takes charge, ordering her team to the church to assist Bernard. Roge then turns to Lodboy, asking him to lend his aid as well. He explains that Lodboy's healing magic is the key to helping the exhausted medics. Eager to prove his worth, Lodboy accepts the mission, finally a chance to be useful. As the others rush off, Roge tells Lilianne that she's coming with him. He reveals their work isn't done. They still have to find the monster responsible. As they venture into the corrupted forest, Lilianne calls out to her master. She stops, suddenly wondering if she should have stayed behind with the others. She admits that at her current level, she feels like she's just a burden to him. Roge is stunned, asking why on earth she would ever think that. He presses for an answer, but she can only say it's just a feeling she has. But Roge turns the tables, insisting that he's the one who's being helped. He admits he's a bit drained after casting so many powerful spells in a row. He couldn't have been so reckless without her there, offering a sincere thank you. Lilianne is left speechless, his words hitting her harder than she expected. Roge turns away, admitting she's the one who deserves thanks for always looking out for him. Lilianne blushes, realizing how foolish she was for sulking over such trivial things. She leans against him, admitting to herself that she truly, deeply loves her teacher, and she wonders if it's selfish to hope he might one day feel the same way. But their quiet moment is shattered by a cracking sound from the darkened woods. A monstrous wolf with glowing red eyes emerges, its jaws dripping with blood. Lilianne leaps into action, unleashing a powerful highest flame pillar. A vortex of fire erupts from her staff, engulfing the beast completely. The wolf snarls, trapped within the inferno of her devastating spell. The flames roar, cooking the monster where it stands. Well, that's one way to handle it. She watches with cold focus as the creature howls in its fiery prison. But the beast is shrouded in miasma, which begins to extinguish the flames. Lilianne calls to her master, preparing a binding spell and asking for his support. She unleashes a steel rope spell, ensnaring the corrupted wolf in magical chains. Roge leaps forward, ready to cast the same spell he used on the villagers. He unleashes Ancientia Nano-Absorb, targeting the source of the beast's power. The wolf howls in agony as the nanomachines are forcibly ripped from its body. The sage floats above, drawing out the last of the corruption with ease. Teamwork makes the dream work, I guess. Later, back at the church, Roge explains the nature of the captured miasma. He holds up a vial, confirming this is the source of the nanomachine plague. Bernard agrees, taking the sample to study it, hoping to prevent another outbreak. Bernard admits he hasn't felt this useless since he was a rookie. Meanwhile, Lodboy is completely passed out from magical exhaustion. Constanze explains he gave her his mana until he couldn't even move. Bernard praises Roge, crediting Lodboy's sacrifice for healing the villagers. Roge just smiles, joking that the kid has certainly earned his dinner. Right on cue, one of the medics announces that the meal is ready. Lilianne cheerfully drags the semi-conscious Lodboy off to eat. He looks thrilled. She calls back to Roge, but he seems lost in thought for a moment. Just then, Bernard approaches with an urgent message from the royal palace. He relays King Sieg's order. Find Sage Roge as soon as possible. Looks like our boy is in demand. Bernard explains the king had already planned to request Roge's assistance. He then offers a sincere apology for his earlier desperate actions. But his composure suddenly breaks, and he grabs the sage by the collar. The man's grip is tight, his face a mask of raw, unfiltered emotion. He confesses that he truly believed the entire village was doomed. Tears stream down his face as he offers a heartfelt, desperate thank you. Raj can only scratch his head, a little flustered by the sudden display. As the medic clings to him, a familiar face watches from the doorway. Lilianne smiles, her heart swelling with pride for her incredible teacher. Inside, the church is filled with life again as the villagers finally receive care. Inspired by the day's events, Loudboy makes a bold declaration to Constanze. She points out his current state, completely paralyzed and being spoon-fed by a medic. He explains that after eating, he'll make his request, sharing a lesson from his master. He finishes his thought, declaring one should always do what they want to do. His simple, direct words seem to strike a chord with the young medic. But when he asks Roge and Bernard, he's met with a swift and brutal rejection. Bernard bluntly asks why he'd ever let a muscle-headed idiot join his ranks. His companions are shocked that a noble is being treated with such disrespect. But Loudboy refuses to back down, his determination unwavering. He quotes the sage's own words, arguing there's a place for everyone, even him. Loudboy declares he doesn't care if he's just used as a mana battery. He explains that joining the Corps is his way of following in his master's footsteps. He begs for a chance, his desperation clear as Roge looks on. But Bernard isn't impressed, stating that good intentions aren't enough for this job. He explains the harsh reality of their duties, from tracking miasma to combat. He tells the young noble to stop asking for handouts and take the official exam. The medic's outburst leaves Roge quietly observing how terrifying the man can be. Roge finally speaks up, reminding Bernard that Lodboy has guts at least. Bernard misreads the situation, thinking Roge is trying to dump his new student on him. But Roge clarifies, simply asking that they give the kid a chance to get some experience. Roge practically begs Bernard, asking him to just show the kid the ropes. Lilianne watches the exchange, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she bows deeply, adding her voice to the plea. She defends Lodboy, admitting he's a fool, but insisting his heart is in the right place. The young noble can only stare, moved by her unexpected support. Worn down by their passion, Bernard finally relents with a heavy sigh. Lodboy is overcome with joy, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The other medics tease their leader, revealing his well-known weakness for passionate people. Roge and Lilianne share a knowing smile, pleased with their successful intervention. She steals a quick glance at her master, sharing in the quiet victory. Roge can't help but laugh at the chaotic but heartwarming scene. Lilianne, however, seems a little lost in her own thoughts. Later that night, Roge tries to relax, wondering when his vacation turned into a training exercise. He worries that all the chaos is taking a much greater toll on Lilianne. But his quiet moment is interrupted as the door to the bath slides open. Roge freezes, his brain completely short-circuiting for the second time in 2 days. Lilianne looks just as flustered, a nervous sweat beading on her face. She apologizes for the intrusion, clutching her towel tightly. And then she gets in the water, as Roge silently begs for an escape route. He's left wondering how his relaxing bath turned into the most awkward moment of his life. The silence is deafening as Lilianne clutches her towel, both of them trapped in the awkwardness. It turns out this whole situation was orchestrated by Lodboy's well-meaning but clueless companion. He'd urged Lilianne to seize the opportunity, pointing out that she was tired too. He even suggested she scrub her master's back, a plan Lilianne politely declined. As she walked away, she muttered that dealing with idiots was giving her a headache. But despite her annoyance, she admits to herself that the fool might have a point. She realizes that if she doesn't act, he'll only ever see her as his student. Back in the present, Roge finally breaks the tension, startling her from her thoughts. He then announces he's getting out, practically launching himself from the water to escape. But Lilianne stops him with a simple request: to please look the other way. Roge panics, desperately trying to put a stop to this entire situation. She explains she just wanted a chance to talk, asking if it's too much trouble. The sage is still sweating, completely baffled by her choice of venue for a heart-to-heart. He questions the logic of talking in a bath, and she awkwardly agrees it's a fair point. She quickly changes the subject, cheerfully noting Bernard will be a great mentor for Lodboy. Lilianne admits she felt useless and discouraged during the Miasma Crisis. But seeing Lodboy's resolve inspired her to not fall behind as the first disciple. Roge realizes they've had a positive influence on each other, then recalls Lodboy's words. He quotes the simple advice to just do what you want, which Lilianne wholeheartedly agrees with. And with a blush, she admits that's exactly why she decided to join him. Checkmate, Sage. The sage is completely flustered, his brain struggling to process the situation. He tries to reason with her, reminding her that she's an adult now. She agrees, pointing out that she's not a child who needs him to look after her. As he tries to splash away, she begins to explain her feelings. She's been happy as his disciple, and even happier as his daughter. But with a deep blush, she admits there's something more she feels for him. Roge's mind goes completely blank, caught in the emotional crossfire. She leans in close, ready to finally confess her true feelings. But the moment is shattered by Lodboy bursting in to offer his services. Talk about a mood killer. He's shocked to see Lilianne, complaining that he missed his chance to join them. A wooden bucket to the face sends Lodboy flying, so much for scrubbing his master's back. Roge scrambles to escape, announcing his hasty retreat as Lilianne watches, mortified. He slams the door behind him, yelling for her to take her time. Smooth, Roge. Real smooth. Lilianne is left alone, her confession cut short, and the romantic tension completely gone. A deep blush covers her face, a mix of embarrassment and lingering feelings. Outside, Roge clutches his head in despair while Lodboy lies unconscious on the floor. The next morning, Laudboy bids a loud and passionate farewell to the medical corps. As they prepare to leave, Bernard gives the young noble some final words of encouragement. He then asks their destination, warning them that Zabelg is known for its anti-mage sentiment. But Lilianne just smiles, seeing it as another adventure and a memory to be made. Roge asks Bernard to take care of his new student, but the medic says it's all up to him. As they walk away, Lilianne gives Laudboy one last loud warning not to cause trouble. Roge muses that it'll be lonely now, but Lilianne bluntly calls it refreshing. Her ice-cold response leaves the sage completely speechless. He quickly backpedals, insisting he was only kidding. But she softens, admitting she'll miss her very first junior disciple. Just a little. Roge realizes that for all her complaining, she was the one who looked out for him the most. As they walk on, she explains she just didn't want her master to worry. The scene shifts to a memory, where a young boy is praised for his incredible magical talent. That same boy is now a young man, hailed as the new emperor. He looks thrilled, doesn't he? The crowd roars, hailing the new emperor Kialius. But his eyes are cold, devoid of any real celebration. An aide asks how to report a recent accident, but Kialius orders it buried. The man panics, worried about witnesses and reports reaching King Sieg. But the new emperor is unfazed, vowing to silence any inconvenient truths. Elsewhere, a man named Lord Treshan is summoned to the emperor's side. Meanwhile, in a grand library, Lady Isabel is asked to perform routine maintenance. Her subordinates try to explain the technical importance of the task. She understands the necessity, but is clearly annoyed by the menial labor. She snaps that it's a job for an underling, one Lilianne used to handle. So much for leadership. Her subordinate explains that only the chief magician can handle such intricate work. Isabel snaps, complaining about her useless staff before agreeing to do it herself. She scoffs at the task, seeing it as mundane work beneath her station. Deciding to get it over with, she prepares to deploy her magic. But she's immediately overwhelmed by an ocean of complex magical circles. The sheer scale and complexity of the task leaves her completely stunned. She realizes it would take her days for a single golem and asks about Lilianne's record. The answer is a humbling list of Lilianne's impossible efficiency. Her subordinates can't help but praise Lilianne's incredible talent. Awkward. Isabel's ego can't take it, and she furiously orders them to be silent. Isabel rationalizes that Lilianne must have been cutting corners to be so efficient. She argues that with all the extra tasks they gave her, proper maintenance was impossible. With a final flourish, she declares the job done, trying to convince herself she's superior. Her subordinates can only exchange a silent, unimpressed glance. Yeah, they're not buying it. The scene shifts to a sunlit conservatory where Lord Treshan enjoys a quiet moment. Emperor Kialius approaches, offering a less than sincere welcome to his guest. Treshan calmly sips his tea, questioning the new emperor's sarcastic tone. Kialius wonders why he didn't just teleport, but Treshan claims the long journey was exhausting. The emperor explains that without a skilled mage like Lilianne, such a feat was impossible. Treshan brings up her resignation, and Kialius confirms the official story of her illness. Treshan then asks if Isabel is a worthy replacement, but Kialius offers only silence. The emperor looks away, insisting there's no issue, but his avoidance speaks volumes. Treshan's cold, knowing gaze suggests he sees right through his brother's lie. He changes the subject, reminding Kialius that he was summoned for a reason. Kialius gets straight to the point, questioning why Treshan hasn't visited their dying father. Treshan dismisses the notion, coldly stating their father wouldn't want to see him. He explains that after their mother's death, their father only ever spoke to Kialius. The emperor's face falls, the painful memories clearly weighing on him. Treshan bitterly recalls being pushed aside as Kialius was chosen as the heir. Kialius's expression twists with rage, wishing his own father would just hurry up and die. Treshan turns away, coolly stating their father can now rest easy with Kialius on the throne. He vows to dedicate himself to supporting the new emperor from the shadows. But Kialius has had enough, demanding his brother stop the condescending act. Treshan just smiles, reminding him that as royalty, he won't lack for power. He adds that while he can't understand Kialius's pain, he sees things the emperor misses. Kialius demands an explanation, and Treshan simply tells him to broaden his horizons. The emperor explodes, a sudden furious realization dawning on his face. He clenches his fist, listing the endless burdens of the crown that wear him down daily. He reveals their parents' true wish, to free Treshan from this ugly world of politics. They wanted Treshan, the truly talented one, to live as freely as possible. Cialius recalls his mother praising his talent, only to dismiss it as useless for a royal. Trishan calls it a remarkable talent, a choice neither he nor their father was ever given. He points out that Cialius has the option to pursue magic and escape the throne. The suggestion leaves the young emperor completely stunned. But Trishan dismisses the idea, content with his life now that Cialius is emperor. With a final cutting remark, he turns to leave. He leaves his brother to stew in the silence and his own resentment. Cialius remembers how their mother doted on Trishan, her precious child. He slams his fist down, enraged by the memory of her praise for his brother. Alone, he's haunted by the pressure to use his power for the nation, a fate he never wanted. The memory cuts deep, his own mother turning Trishan away from his door. She insisted that Cialius's studies were far too important to be disturbed. Back in the present, the emperor collapses, broken by the weight of his gilded cage. Meanwhile, far from the palace, Lilianne is practicing a new kind of magic. She unleashes a powerful ancient spell, the Ancientia Meteor Shooter. A massive magical projectile forms, ready to launch into the sky. Looks like someone's been studying rocketry. She struggles to maintain control, the immense power taking its toll. But the spell suddenly dissipates, the energy fizzling out into nothing. She sighs in frustration, admitting that another attempt has ended in failure. But Roge is quick to reassure her, praising her progress with this difficult magic. He reminds her that the ancient meteor spell is actually a missile. The closer it gets to the caster, the more unstable the mana becomes. Determined to succeed, Lilianne prepares to cast the spell once more. She channels her power, pouring every ounce of focus into the magic circle. But just like time and space magic, the spell is incredibly difficult to control. Roge steps in from behind, guiding her hand to stabilize the energy. He notices her sudden silence, calling out her name in confusion. But Lilianne is completely frozen, her face a deep shade of crimson. Realizing he crossed a line, Roge practically teleports away with an apology. He awkwardly changes the subject, blaming himself for getting too close. Lilianne agrees to continue, her heart pounding now that she's aware of her feelings. Roge panics internally, completely forgetting how to act normal around his student. They try to move past the awkwardness, cheerfully discussing their next destination. But their journey is interrupted as both begin coughing, the air suddenly irritating them. Roge observes the coarse, dusty atmosphere, a sense of dread creeping in. They arrive in a village that's a ghost of Lilianne's cheerful memories. The rooftops are covered in a strange, decaying substance, a sign of a creeping blight. The once thriving town is now completely devoid of life, leaving them stunned. Roge wastes no time preparing a protective spell as Lilianne calls his name in alarm. Their eyes meet, a silent acknowledgement that they've walked into another disaster. A lone old woman greets them, saying she's missed them dearly. Lilianne and Roge are overjoyed, recognizing her as an old friend named Anna. But Anna seems confused, offering to cook for someone Roge doesn't recognize. He tries to correct her, but she can't seem to remember his name at all. Lilianne gently asks if her memory is failing, a worried look on her face. The old woman's attention snaps to Lilianne, suddenly complimenting her beauty. But her mood shifts in an instant. Accusing Roge of cheating and vowing to kill him, she unleashes a flurry of blows with her cane, a surprisingly fierce attack for a woman her age. Just then, a younger woman rushes in, scolding the old woman for her attire. She apologizes for the chaos, explaining that her grandmother has been senile for some time. The young woman introduces herself as Louise, here from the capital to work the fields. Roge is impressed by her spirit and asks after an old friend named Klaus. But Louise reveals the man died 3 years ago, stunning them both into silence. She seems unfazed by their shock, explaining he wasn't sick when he passed. She cheerfully imagines he's telling jokes in heaven, which sounds just like him. Louise then invites them inside their home, offering them a change of clothes. Inside, they begin to wash the dust from their travel-worn clothes. As Lilianne holds up the dusty robes, Anna offers to do the washing for her. But Lilianne insists on learning, which Anna misinterprets as bride training. The comment leaves Lilianne flustered as Anna praises her wifely potential, nothing like a little matchmaking. Anna calls her Lily, a name that catches Lilianne completely off guard. She quickly plays it off with a smile, brushing the comment aside. Roge asks Louise what happened here, questioning the strange weather. The young woman prepares to tell them the grim story of the village. She explains the sun disappeared 2 months ago, replaced by endless dust. To make matters worse, She says some villagers are blaming her grandfather. The duo is completely lost, asking her to explain the bizarre accusation. She reveals a suspicious group arrived just as the Blight began. They claimed the weather was a curse from the ghosts of their ancestors, and for a small fee they offered to appease the spirits. Sounds legit. Louise passionately insists it's a scam, certain her grandfather would never harm his home. But the other villagers were desperate, willing to believe anything to fix the weather. She reveals the cemetery was desecrated, a grim detail that somehow sold the lie. She's convinced the scammers did it themselves, but the villagers are too scared to think. Roge can only think of his friend Klaus and the man he used to be. Anna clutches his hand, tearfully recalling Klaus's promise to protect the village. Roge and Lilianne exchange a worried glance, wondering if they could have prevented this. Louise tries to comfort her grandmother, repeating that Klaus would never hurt them. But Anna just squeezes Roge's hand, telling him not to worry. Moved by her faith, Roge makes a solemn vow to help her and save the village. Anna's eyes well with tears, her grip tightening as Louise looks on in surprise. A memory surfaces of a young Klaus, declaring his profound love for this very village. He had promised to protect Anna and their home, even beyond death itself. It was in that moment that he had shyly asked for her hand in marriage. A younger Anna had accepted without hesitation, sealing their shared future. Klaus's face had lit up with pure, unadulterated joy at her answer. The memory fades, leaving only a framed photograph of the man he became. Now Anna can only stare at his picture, a lonely figure in a darkened room. Elsewhere, a large purple tent stands ominously on the outskirts of the village. Louise cautiously pulls back the flap, ready to confront the so-called curse removers. Inside, a man in ornate robes stands with his hooded followers, a self-proclaimed holy man. He coldly tells Louise not to disturb their prayers, his patience clearly wearing thin. But she fires back, calling them all scammers, which earns her a condescending dismissal. His smug expression falters as he notices someone else has entered the tent. Lilianne steps forward, her gaze fixed on the so-called leader with cold determination. The man's composure completely shatters, his face flushing red at the sight of her. He introduces himself as Gregoire, suddenly trying to act suave and sophisticated. But Roge steps in, announcing that he's the one Gregoire needs to deal with. He introduces himself as a mage, asking if their group can truly see spirits. Gregoire scoffs, dismissing Roge as some old man clinging to a childish dream. Roge smirks, admitting that in his current attire he does look like a simple old man. But Lilianne and Louise aren't having it, insisting science and magic can find the real cause. Roge steps in, cheerfully asking how long their prayers are supposed to take. He presses further, questioning how long they've known about this supposed ancestral anger. Gregoire coldly replies that they are simply praying for those who disrespect the dead. Roge then lays down a challenge. If he fixes the weather, will they return the villagers' money? The so-called holy man is left utterly speechless by the audacity of the offer. He grabs Raj, accusing him of blasphemy and questioning his authority. Gregoire shoves him back, threatening to sacrifice them if they don't leave immediately. He even promises divine punishment, which Roge seems less than terrified by. As they walk away, Roge muses that God's magic is likely just a fancy term. Lilianne and Louise vent their frustration, agreeing the so-called holy man was incredibly annoying. But Roge's attention is suddenly caught by something out of the corner of his eye. He glances back toward the scammer's tent, a flicker of suspicion in his gaze. He spots a crate full of shovels, noting they're not exactly standard prayer equipment. Roge realizes this is their chance. The soil on those shovels could prove they're grave robbers. Later, Anna serves them a meager meal, apologizing for the poor harvest. Louise tries to reassure her, but Anna is heartbroken over the state of their village. Lilianne's fond memories of the local food surprises Anna, who asks if she's from around here. Louise tries to remind her grandmother of Lilianne, but Anna's memory fails her completely. Louise playfully jokes about her grandmother's failing memory as Roge laughs along. But Lilianne finds it beautiful that even with her memory gone, Anna still remembers Klaus. Louise agrees, saying her grandfather loved Anna more than anything in the world. Curious, Lilianne asks the old woman what she loved most about her late husband. Anna blushes, admitting it was his honesty, a quality Lilianne finds incredibly endearing. She recalls that in all their years together, she only ever saw him truly angry once. The story begins with their son, who once lied about a magical beast attacking the village. The prank sent everyone into a panic, terrifying the children and causing widespread chaos. and though their son apologized, Klaus refused to forgive him for the cruel joke. Louise finds his reaction a bit childish, but Anna seems to have a different perspective. Anna asks Lilianne to weigh in on her husband's seemingly harsh reaction. She explains that Klaus believed in never scaring people, no matter the reason. He knew that fear could leave emotional scars that might never truly heal. Louise finally understands the depth of her grandfather's principles. Anna smiles, absolutely certain her kind husband would never harm his own village. Louise is moved to tears by her grandmother's unwavering faith. Meanwhile, back at the scammer's tent, Gregoire's followers are getting nervous. But Gregoire scoffs, claiming mages are too arrogant to see the truth. He predicts Roge will just blame the problem on some random magical beast. With a smug grin, he plans to squeeze more cash out of the village before disappearing. What a stand-up guy. But their scheming is interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Anna herself. She recognizes Gregoire, remembering him as the son of a local troublemaker. Elsewhere, Roge suggests they get to the bottom of this dust problem first. Lilianne begs him to drop the strange accent, and he sheepishly admits he was just role-playing. She gets to work, casting a spell to gather the mysterious particles from the air. Louise is amazed she can cast without a wand, but Lilianne explains it's part of her training. Roge watches with pride, remarking that his student is already a master in her own right. He then casts his own spell, a diagnostic scope to analyze the sample. The results flash before his eyes and his expression shifts to one of shock. He reveals the truth to a stunned Lilianne. This isn't dust, it's volcanic ash. Louise is shocked, realizing the mist is actually made of tiny stone fragments. Roge asks about a nearby volcano, and Lilianne confirms one exists, though it's far away. He connects the ash to a recent earthquake, a bit disappointed it's not a monster. Just your average Tuesday for these two. With the cause found, Roge says they just need to clean up the ash. But Louise has other plans, vowing to get the villagers' money back by force. She stomps off in a rage, and Lilianne agrees her anger is completely justified. She adds that she'd be just as furious if anyone used her master's name in vain. Roge gets flustered, but Lilianne clarifies that's not exactly what she meant. She looks at him with deep affection, admitting he has no idea how much she cares. Roge, ever the master of emotional awareness, just tells her they need to hurry. Anna lies on the floor, having been shoved aside by the so-called holy man. His followers panic, calling her insane and demanding she be removed. Gregoire's expression turns menacing, his patience clearly at its end. But Anna refuses to back down, ordering the scammers out of her village. One of the hooded figures steps forward, telling her she's the one who should leave. Gregoire argues that the villagers chose to give them their money. His followers grab the old woman, callously dragging her toward the exit. Gregoire decides he's had enough of her interference. He raises his staff, threatening to make her the first sacrifice to the spirits. He summons a massive water wolf ready to silence her for good. So much for divine punishment. The magical beast lunges forward, a torrent of water and rage. Anna struggles helplessly, caught between the two hooded figures. Tears stream down her face as she calls out her husband's name in despair. But before the attack can land, a massive plant shield erupts from the ground. The spell not only blocks the attack, but also ensnares the two followers. Gregoire is left speechless, wondering how his best magic could have failed. His followers spot the rescuer, Raj, now holding Anna safely in his arms. The sage's expression is cold, a silent promise of what's to come. Gregoire loses his composure, demanding to know how a simple old man stopped him. But his next spell is cut short as magical steel ropes bind him completely. Lilianne stands over the fallen scammer, reminding him that her master is a magician. The followers are stunned, realizing she cast the powerful binding spell without a staff. A feat said to be difficult even for S-rank mages, leaving them terrified of their new guests. Lilianne admits she should have brought her staff, as her casting speed is slightly slower. But Roge notes the spell is sturdy enough as Gregoire struggles uselessly in his bonds. Roge then drops the bombshell, revealing the dust is actually ash from a nearby volcano. He accuses them of using a natural disaster to commit fraud against the desperate villagers. Lilianne adds that with her master's magic, proving their guilt will be simple. The threat of the royal capital sends the scammers into a full-blown panic. Roge gives them one last chance, apologize and return every last coin they stole. Roge can't help but let out a hearty laugh at the scammers' predicament. One of the followers tries to save face, mocking the villagers for being so easily fooled. Gregoire laughs nervously, claiming the simple folk wouldn't understand the truth anyway. But his words fall on deaf ears as the furious villagers surround him, tools in hand. His smug expression vanishes as one of the villagers repeats his own words back to him. They agree they're not educated enough to understand his excuses, and no amount of explaining is going to calm their righteous anger. A final scream echoes from the tent as the villagers deliver some much-needed moral education. The scene shifts to a memory of what this village once was and will be again. A place of hard work and hope where people toiled under the sun for a better future. Gregoire, now dressed as a farmer, feels his heart has been cleansed by honest labor. The villagers ensure the scammers work off their debt, one harvest at a time. With a single spell, Rouge restores the desecrated cemetery in a brilliant flash of light. Louise thanks them for everything, grateful to have her home and village back. Filled with new purpose, she runs off to tend the fields as Rouge watches thoughtfully. He stands at a distance, observing Anna as she finally visits her husband's grave in peace. Later, Lilianne approaches Louise, telling her she did an incredible job. She acknowledges how difficult it must have been to fight that battle all by herself. But Louise just smiles, saying she always knew they were bad guys. Lilianne is amazed. She admits that at Louise's age, she was far more hopeless and lost. Lilianne confesses she nearly went crazy from homesickness when she was away from her master. Louise is moved by her honesty, calling her truly admirable for her dedication. The young woman then decides to share a secret of her own. She reveals that since her grandfather's death, Anna's dementia has gotten much worse. Her parents, who work in the capital, suggested moving Anna there with them. But Louise knew her grandparents would never want to leave the home they built together. Lilianne is stunned, realizing the heavy burden this young woman has been carrying. Louise clenches her fist, vowing to be strong and protect her grandfather's legacy. But her resolve wavers as she admits that Anna is gradually forgetting everything. She fears the day her grandmother will forget her, the farm, and even the man she loved. Tears stream down her face as she confesses her fear of the future. Lilianne is stunned by the young woman's heartbreaking vulnerability. Louise admits she's just grateful that Anna's love for Klaus remains unshaken. Overcome with empathy, Lilianne pulls her into a tight, comforting hug. As they stand together, Anna's voice calls out to Rouge from the cemetery. She tells him that when he arrived, she truly believed Klaus had come back to life. Standing by the grave, she thanks him for bringing her a moment of impossible joy. Rouge is left speechless, unsure how to respond to such a heavy confession. Anna asks what's wrong, but he quickly brushes it off, hiding his own emotions. She then calls him Klaus, asking what he wants for dinner. Well, this is awkward. Rouge can only offer a flustered laugh, caught completely off guard by her words. The memory of Klaus lives on, a warm smile captured in a sunlit photograph. The next day, Louise and Anna see them off with a cheerful, heartfelt farewell. Louise promises them a feast of vegetables on their next visit, a promise Lilianne happily accepts. The young woman's spirit is infectious, a bright spot in a village on the mend. As they ride away, Lilianne reflects on the beautiful love story between Klaus and Anna. She admits she longs for that kind of trusting relationship, catching Rouge by surprise. Rouge then brings up the inevitable, reminding her that she'll get married someday too. He jokes that he'll be lonely when she does, trying to lighten the mood. Way to make it about you, Sage. But his comment is met with a sudden, sharp glance from his disciple. Her face flushes, a silent rebuke for his thoughtless words. Rouge immediately realizes he's stepped on a conversational landmine. He's still trying to process her confession, yet keeps saying the wrong thing. But she blames herself, knowing she was hurt by her own expectations. An uncomfortable silence hangs between them as they walk on. Lilianne finally breaks the tension, realizing it's been 2 months since they left. Rouge can only hope their former companion hasn't been kicked out yet. The scene shifts to the grand royal capital of the Dolga Kingdom. We arrive at the Royal Medical Corps headquarters, inside the commander's office, where Bernard is currently struggling with his formal attire. Fashion is pain, apparently. Bernard tells his new apprentice to stop complaining, his focus already on the lab results. Lodboy argues he's been working non-stop, but Bernard offers a very sharp rebuttal. He dismisses a mountain of paperwork, prioritizing the anti-miasma vaccine above all else. The young noble is left stunned, realizing his new mentor is a far cry from the easygoing sage. 2 other medics cheerfully greet their director upon his return. Bernard, now in more casual clothes, apologizes to his team for being away so long. They welcome him back, and he assures them the situation in Volcano is completely resolved. Loudboy presents a report, confirming no major issues arose in his absence. But Bernard cuts straight to the chase, asking for an update on the nanomachine analysis. He grows impatient, reminding his subordinate that the miasma samples were top priority. The medics exchange confused glances, a sense of unease filling the room. Bernard explains he sent a team ahead with the crucial miasma samples, but his subordinate nervously reports that only Bernard's group has returned. Bernard's mind flashes back, certain he entrusted the samples to Constanze. He demands to know where she is, only to learn she never arrived. A wave of shock hits Bernard and Loudboy as the grim reality sets in. Elsewhere, a lone medic lies unconscious by a river, groaning in pain. Constanze stands over him, her expression distant and exhausted. She calls out to her fallen senior, her breath ragged with exertion and fear. The scene cuts to two new faces admiring a fortress, because why stick to one plotline? As they approach the fortress of Zabelg, Roge explains its purpose. A show of military strength. Inside, a knight in imposing armor scoffs at the audacity of a mage entering his domain. Roge reminds Lilianne that this is a training ground for knights, a group not exactly fond of their kind. Flanked by his men, the knight leader gets straight to the point. They don't like mages. He accuses them of mocking the knights' hard work with their effortless, elitist ideology. But Lilianne steps forward, shouting that he's completely misunderstood them. Roge panics, asking if they're being turned away, but the knight's answer is surprisingly gentle. He explains they were spotted from the watchtower and have been expected. Then, in a complete tonal shift, he throws his arms wide, welcoming Sage Roge home. Talk about mixed signals. Roge and Lilianne can only stare, completely baffled by this bizarre turn of events. The knight snaps Roge out of his daze, demanding to know if he's the sage. He gets uncomfortably close, and a sweating Roge nervously confirms his identity. The knight vows that Roge will never forget his face, which is currently hidden by a helmet. Realizing his error, the knight sheepishly removes the cumbersome headgear. Roge and Lilianne are left completely speechless by the face revealed underneath. The knight is a woman, one who claims she's thought of him for nearly 20 years. But Roge has absolutely no memory of her, a fact that does not go over well. She grabs him by the collar, furiously reintroducing herself as a Katarina. As Roge's world spins, Lilianne connects the dots to the legendary Saraphim Quartet, a group of 4 swordsmen said to be legendary knights of unparalleled strength. She proudly introduces herself as a Katarina Mordred, daughter of the quartet's leader. One of the knights explains they're now a quintet, having added a mage 5 years ago. The memory finally clicks for Roge, who apologizes for not recognizing the little girl she once was. Ekaterina seems to accept his apology, but her focus quickly shifts to a new target. She turns on Lilianne, condescendingly asking if she's ever going to stop following Roge around. Lilianne stammers a defense, but Ekaterina jumps to the worst possible conclusion. They're newlyweds. Both of them shut that idea down immediately, their faces burning with embarrassment. Ekaterina seems relieved, recalling their relationship was more like that of a father and daughter. She presses the point, asking Lilianne if she's ever going to grow up. Nothing like a warm welcome. Before Lilianne can argue, Ekaterina declares it's time for Roge to fulfill an old promise. Roge is completely lost, having no memory of making any kind of promise. Ekaterina smirks, triggering a flashback to a fateful encounter nearly 2 decades ago. The memory begins with a ridiculously long scroll, a contract of some kind, legal documents, the true final boss. Back then, Raj had saved her from a monstrous beast, turning it to dust with his magic. A young, teary-eyed Ekaterina had thanked him, introducing herself as she blushed with gratitude. A younger Roge admits he mistook her for a boy, finally connecting her to the famous Mordred family. The girl's eyes light up, thrilled that he recognizes her legendary father's name. But her mood sours as she repeats the familiar anti-mage sentiment she's been taught. She calls magic nothing more than cheating, but someone else is quick to disagree. A tiny Lilianne peeks out from behind Roge's cloak, fiercely defending her master's honor. But the young Ekaterina admits she was impressed by his power, a rare compliment from the proud warrior. Raj tries to play peacemaker as the 2 girls bicker, a scene of pure childhood chaos. He pats her head, gently warning her not to fight monsters alone until she's older. With a warm smile, he reminds her just how dangerous this world can be. His unexpected kindness leaves the young knight in training completely flustered. She agrees to listen, but only if he makes her a promise in return. She declares that one day they will have a duel, her sword against his magic. And with a fiery shout, she demands he marry her when she wins. Talk about a long-term plan. The memory ends, leaving a present-day Rouge and Lilianne completely dumbfounded. Their minds simultaneously short-circuit, unable to process the 20-year-old proposal. Ekaterina declares that Rouge is the only strong person she's ever acknowledged. She deems him worthy of being her consort, vowing to defeat him to prove it. She then lunges forward, shouting her intent to claim his magnificent seed. Well, that's one way to propose. Her knights erupt in cheers, much to the horror of a very confused Lilianne. Rouge frantically denies making such a promise, but Ekaterina reminds him of their pinky swear. She even reveals the penalty for breaking it, presenting a tray of 1,000 needles. She came prepared. Lilianne tries to intervene, claiming he was just humoring a child, but Ekaterina's expression darkens. Faced with a needle to the face, Rouge immediately recants, shouting that he remembers the duel. He turns to a horrified Lilianne, sheepishly apologizing as he's dragged into this mess. The scene shifts to a grand coliseum, where the stage is set for their fateful battle. Rouge looks less than thrilled to be facing the fully armored knight commander. From the stands, Lilianne worries, knowing mages are at a disadvantage in close quarters. She recalls their childhood rivalry, a bitter fight over who would marry her master. The referee wastes no time, signaling for the long-awaited duel to begin. But Rouge's expression immediately shifts from apprehension to pure shock. Lilianne shares his disbelief, her eyes wide with surprise. Ekaterina has launched herself into the sky with a single powerful leap. Even Rouge is impressed by her incredible leg strength, so much for knights being slow. High above, she ignites her blade, unleashing a torrent of violet flames. She plummets back to earth, bringing her fiery sword down in a devastating strike. Rouge throws up a magical shield, the force of the impact rattling him to his core. He grits his teeth, pouring every ounce of his energy into holding back her assault. But Ekaterina is relentless, unleashing a furious barrage of fiery sword strikes. She follows up with another technique, the dance of 1,000 swords. The sheer speed of her attack leaves Rouge with no time to react. He admits this is far beyond human skill, and his 40-year-old body is reaching its limit. But the sage isn't done yet, preparing a powerful counterspell of his own. A flash of green light reflects in Ekaterina's visor as she senses the shift. Rouge's magic erupts, clashing with her blade in a blinding explosion of power. The knight is caught completely off guard by the unexpected magical backlash. The force of the blast sends Ekaterina skidding across the arena floor. Rouge can't help but be impressed, noting she barely managed to dodge that. From the stands, her knights can only stare in awe at the spectacle. Lilianne is stunned, wondering if he used magic to outpace the commander's speed. She realizes Ekaterina's pure swordsmanship is on a level she can't yet comprehend. Ekaterina laughs, glad to see the sage hasn't lost his touch over the years. Rouge just smiles, humbly claiming his old body is struggling to keep up. Yeah, right. But his next move is anything but humble, summoning a new kind of magic. A massive stone golem erupts from the ground, its fist slamming into the arena. Rouge stands beside it, offering a sheepish, as if he just ordered the wrong thing. But Ekaterina has a counter of her own, shattering her heavy armor to pieces. Her knights are stunned, realizing she's about to reveal her ultimate fighting form. She sheds her armor, revealing a legend. Anyone who sees her like this is said to die. Rouge and Lilianne can only process one word, and it's not die. Now unburdened, she swings her massive blade with terrifying speed and grace. Rouge looks up, sensing the shift in the battle as she prepares her next assault. Her eyes narrow with focus. The real fight is just beginning. She moves in a blur, but Rouge uses a quick teleportation spell to evade her strike. With a wild grin, she unleashes her signature move, the Moonlight Shockwave. The dark energy slams into Rouge, who is caught completely off guard by its power. Ekaterina roars in frustration, accusing him of running from a real fight. But Rouge is done dodging, summoning an ancient power, the Ancientia Battle Gear. A colossal golden gauntlet materializes behind him, radiating immense magical energy. He follows up with another spell, calling forth the legendary Ancientia Divine Spear. Ekaterina's eyes widen in disbelief as she senses the shift in the air. A massive ornate spear of pure light forms above the arena, dwarfing everything below. The knight can only stare, overwhelmed by the ridiculously intimidating presence. She grits her teeth, muttering that this is exactly why she hates mages. You know, the whole overkill thing. From the stands, Lilianne watches in absolute awe, her mind reeling from the spectacle. She recognizes the ancient weapon, wondering just how much power her master unleashed to create it. Lilianne can only watch as Ekaterina prepares to unleash her final, desperate attack. With a wild grin, she launches forward in a thunderous dash. Roge braces himself, surprised by the sheer speed of her advance. Her blade meets his magic in a blinding flash of raw power. The resulting shockwave is so intense it even throws Lilianne back in the stands. But when the dust settles, it's Raj who stands victorious over the fallen knight. Ekaterina can only stare up in disbelief, her body and pride completely shattered. So much for that marriage proposal. The sage catches his breath, the intense duel clearly taking a toll on him. The crowd erupts in a deafening roar, hailing the incredible battle they just witnessed. But from the stands, Lilianne watches with a quiet, unreadable expression. Ekaterina hangs her head, the weight of her 20-year-long ambition finally crashing down. But Roge offers a hand, admitting with a weary smile that he nearly died himself. His friendly gesture seems to completely short-circuit her brain. The proud knight commander breaks down, wailing that it's unfair he used ancient magic. Roge is completely unprepared for the sudden, full-blown tantrum. Her loyal knights are equally distraught, crying out for their fallen commander. But their tears turn to pride as they bow, honoring her incredible effort. Talk about a supportive workplace. Lilianne rushes to his side as Roge panics, thinking he's the one who made her cry. But she coldly states that Ekaterina brought this duel entirely on herself. With that, she grabs her master and drags him away, eager to leave the drama behind. But Ekaterina calls out, stopping them in their tracks. She offers them a place to stay, her knights weeping with emotion behind her. Lilianne politely declines, eager to put some distance between them and this drama. Roge tries to make an excuse, but the knight commander isn't taking no for an answer. She has a request: stay and provide her troops with anti-magic training. She frames it as an order, reminding him that he owes her after their duel. So much for a clean getaway. The two women immediately clash, arguing over who gets to monopolize the sage's time. Her knights then surround Roge, explaining just how long their commander has waited. The pressure mounts as they stare him down, leaving him no room to refuse. And so, Roge finds himself at the training grounds, roped into yet another commitment. One of the knights thanks Roge profusely, grateful for the rare chance to train against magic. Roge is almost blinded by their youthful energy, musing on how dazzling they are. He admits he expected to be turned away, but the knights confess they simply envy his talent. Their pride, they explain, comes from protecting their country by any means necessary. Elsewhere, Lilianne has her own group of admirers, who are honored to be taught by her. Roge watches her, thinking to himself that she'd be better off with a man her own age. His expression grows distant as he considers his own unsuitability for her. He can't understand why she would ever choose an old man like him. Our boy is having an existential crisis. As the sun sets over the fortress, Lilianne suggests it's finally time for them to leave. But Roge seems distracted by the sounds of training, lost in his own troubled thoughts. She reminds him they've been there for 4 days, suggesting it's finally time to leave. Roge admits the pressure is intense, but Lilianne suddenly asks if he's always liked Ekaterina. She continues, praising the knight commander as a strong and reliable companion. The question catches Roge completely off guard, and he stammers for an explanation. Lilianne's frustration boils over as she asks why he'd lead Ekaterina on when she so clearly adores him. Her pointed question leaves the sage completely stunned and at a loss for words, but her anger quickly fades to embarrassment, a deep blush coloring her cheeks. Roge can only manage a flustered apology, but their conversation is cut short. A red-haired knight grabs him, eagerly inviting him to her next training session. He's just that popular, apparently. But Lilianne steps between them, declaring her master is tired and she'll take his place. The red-haired knight scoffs, telling Lilianne she should focus on getting stronger. Ekaterina joins in, mocking Lilianne's frail body, but the young mage fires right back. The two women turn their fury on the poor knight caught between them, a classic case of wrong place, wrong time. Deciding he's had enough of this, Roge grabs Lilianne and teleports them both away. Ekaterina is left fuming, muttering about her disdain for magicians and their tricks. Later, Ekaterina asks how Lilianne can be so confident, and the mage's answer is simple. She trains to be worthy of Roge. But the knight commander cuts deep, reminding Lilianne that she still lost the duel. Lilianne admits with a blush that her entire life has been dedicated to becoming like her master. Ekaterina claims to know Roge better, having watched his greatness from afar for years. But Lilianne breaks down, crying that she knows she'll never reach his level. Ekaterina stands over her, a long silence hanging in the air. She finally speaks, telling Lilianne to never treat her as an equal. The knight scoffs at the idea that the power gap with Roge even matters. She calls Lilianne a coward, someone who has been spoiled by the sage's kindness. The verbal assault continues, accusing her of hiding in Roge's shadow and playing the victim. She grabs Lilianne's chin, forcing the young mage to listen to her harsh truths. Ekaterina declares that unlike Lilianne, she forges her own path and decides her own worth. She tells Lilianne to wallow in her self-pity for all she cares. Someone's not a fan of pity parties. The words hit Lilianne like a physical blow, leaving her speechless and trembling. But as the tears fall, Lilianne admits to herself that every single word was true. The scene shifts to a meal, where Ekaterina tries to feed a flustered Roge. She warns him about the perils of old age, insisting he needs the protein. He desperately looks to Lilianne for help, but she's pointedly ignoring him. Roge realizes just how angry she is, deciding he needs to end this training and talk to her. He looks over at her, a wave of guilt washing over his face. But before he can speak, Ekaterina shoves a piece of meat into his mouth. So much for a serious conversation. The sudden move leaves both Roge and Lilianne completely stunned. But the moment is shattered as Ekaterina snaps into commander mode, shouting orders. She rushes to a communication device, demanding an immediate status report. The news is grim. A giant cyclops covered in miasma is heading straight for them. Roge's face pales, the word miasma sending a jolt of alarm through him. Through a magical scope, they see the beast, confirming it's the same energy from Volcano. Ekaterina seems unconcerned, but Raj insists they lure the monster away from the fortress. She declares she'll handle it herself, but Roge immediately volunteers to join her. He argues it's too dangerous, but she fires back that protecting this place is her duty. She refuses to be a coward and leave the fate of her city in the hands of a traveler. With finality, she declares that the decision is hers alone, leaving Raj speechless. Lilianne can only watch with concern as the commander's pride takes over. But Ekaterina reconsiders, admitting it's foolish to charge in without a plan. Progress. She orders her knights to defend the gate while she and Roger take the lead. But Lilianne insists on joining him, only for Roge to order her to stay behind. She's completely taken aback, demanding to know why he's benching her. He explains that the miasma is an unknown variable. They need a mage in the rear for support. But his eyes betray another, more personal reason for his decision. He points out that her mana has been unstable, mirroring her turbulent emotions. His mind flashes back to her jealous outburst, and the pieces finally click into place. The realization that he's the cause leaves him a flustered, blushing mess. But before he can stumble through an apology, Lilianne cuts him off with fierce determination. She clarifies that she understands he's entrusting her with the rear guard, not sidelining her. Her complete faith in his decision leaves the powerful sage utterly speechless. Roge's mind races, trying to figure out why he's suddenly so embarrassed. He stammers, trying to explain to Lilianne just how important she is to him. But Ekaterina interrupts with a swift punch, demanding they focus on the actual emergency. A blushing Lilianne quietly agrees, bringing their awkward moment to a merciful end. She chastises herself internally, feeling she's once again let her selfish feelings show. Ekaterina's words echo in her mind, a harsh reminder to forge her own path. With renewed determination, she pushes her feelings aside to focus on her duty. Lilianne takes command, ordering the knights to prepare for a long-range assault from the walls. As they walk, Ekaterina can't help but mock the sage's very obvious flustered state. The ground shakes as the miasma-covered Cyclops finally arrives at the fortress. But the Cyclops isn't alone. It's riding a massive miasma-shrouded boar. The beast's single eye glows with an unnatural light, scanning the forest. Elsewhere, a young mage realizes he's been spotted, deducing this is no ordinary monster. He decides to investigate the miasma directly, preparing a spell on the forest floor. With a burst of speed, he uses a flash move to close the distance. He zips right over the beast's head, leaving it momentarily confused. The miasma-covered creature turns, trying to track its nimble new opponent. The young mage is confident his speed will keep him one step ahead of the monster. He unleashes a barrage of magic circles, calling on the Ancientia laser. Apparently, Ancientia is a popular brand. Multiple beams of pure energy slam into the beast as he pours his power into the attack. He watches the smoke clear, confident his powerful spell has done the job. But his confidence turns to disbelief as the beast remains completely unharmed. The miasma seems to have gathered and canceled out his ancient magic entirely. The beast roars, forcing the young mage to leap back to avoid its furious charge. He realizes the miasma is concentrating nanomachines to harden the monster's body, but knowing the cause doesn't make the roaring Cyclops any less terrifying. The monster slams its fist into the ground, shattering the earth around it. He throws up a shield, barely blocking the deadly spray of rock shrapnel. The Cyclops roars again, gathering its dark energy for an even bigger attack. It leaps high into the air, preparing to bring down a devastating rain of boulders. Roge's face twists in panic as he realizes the monster's true target. The volley of massive boulders is heading straight for the fortress of Zabelg. On the walls, the knights scramble, preparing to shoot down the incoming barrage. But Lilianne steps forward, ordering them to hold their fire and conserve their ammunition. She raises her staff, unleashing a powerful multi-layered barrier spell. A grid of glowing hexagonal shields materializes in the sky, ready to intercept. The knights look on in disbelief at the sheer number of magical defenses she's summoned. The boulders slam into the shields, exploding harmlessly against the magical wall. From the battlefield, Roge watches with a proud and relieved smile. The knights are left completely stunned, amazed by her incredible display of power. The knights are in awe. Not a single crack has appeared on the fortress walls. Lilianne catches her breath, the massive spell having taken a clear toll on her stamina. From the battlefield, Roge smiles with pride, knowing his student has succeeded. The miasma-covered boar roars in frustration as Raj analyzes its defensive properties. He admits he can't do this alone and casts Ancientia Bind, trapping the beast in golden rings. Roge realizes the miasma only reacts to attacks, forming a plan to concentrate its power. He unleashes another Ancientia laser, focusing the beam on a single point. His expression is one of pure focus as he pours his energy into the attack. The beam collides with the miasma, but Roge knows he needs to push it even further. He roars internally, demanding more power as the laser intensifies into a blinding light. Roge grits his teeth, pushing every last bit of mana into the spell. The concentrated beam slams into the miasma, creating a blinding explosion. He roars for Ekaterina, telling her the beast's back is now wide open. The Knight Commander launches herself into the air, ready to strike. Her eyes glow with power as she unleashes her thunderous dash. She follows up with a second form, a devastating downward slash. The miasma-covered boar can only roar as the blade finds its mark. Ekaterina's focus is absolute, her entire being poured into this one strike. Roge can only watch, completely spent from his magical assault. As she lands, he can't help but be impressed by her overwhelming power. Elsewhere, the young mage watches the fortress, his silent observation finally at an end. Back on the ground, Roge confirms his worst fears about the creature's dark energy. It wasn't miasma, but nanomachines, an ancient technology of terrifying durability. He decides they must take a sample to the Royal Medical Corps for proper analysis. Just then, Lilianne flies down from the wall, calling out to her master. Roge begins to praise her, but she interrupts with urgent news from the border. The Kaiserland Empire's magical weapons have activated, and an invasion has begun. The sudden declaration of war leaves both Roge and Ekaterina completely stunned. The scene shifts to the Kaiserland Empire, where a subordinate calls for their leader. And the one they call Thrush Sama is none other than the young mage from the forest. In the Kaiserland Empire, a pink-haired woman chides Thrush for being distracted. She demands his full attention, but he internally dismisses her as noise. His mood is already foul, and her nagging is the last thing he wants to deal with. The words of a mentor seem to haunt him, pushing him to broaden his horizons. He finally snaps, screaming for the voices to stop as his companion flinches in shock. The young woman is left completely stunned by his sudden violent outburst. She quickly recovers, firing back and accusing him of looking down on her. But their squabble is interrupted by an urgent summons from the Emperor. Nothing like a royal decree to kill the mood. The news is dire. Their national defense magical tools are going completely haywire. And across the Empire, that failure is measured in fire and screams. The Empire's ancient war machines awaken, their single eyes glowing with destructive intent. A wave of mechanical destruction sweeps through the city as the Golems begin their rampage. The situation is far worse than they imagined. The weapons are invading the neighboring Dolga kingdom. Thrush can only stare in disbelief, the scale of the disaster finally sinking in. His companion immediately accuses him of treason, but he furiously denies any responsibility. She then shifts the blame to the subordinate who promoted her. Nothing says teamwork like a good old-fashioned blame game. Thrush desperately calls for the mages, only to learn the control systems have been sabotaged. A horrifying thought crosses the young woman's mind. She might have caused this during maintenance. Thrush pulls rank, citing orders from a superior as he tells the others to go on without him. The subordinate is left completely baffled by the young mage's sudden command. Thrush calmly states he has a contingency plan and will head out once it's ready. His companion, however, is in a full-blown panic, urged to hurry in the emergency. Elsewhere, a high-ranking official watches the chaos from his window, demanding answers. He orders his men to find the chief mage and immediately report the situation to Dolga, but he's told the chief mage dismissed the messenger and has since disappeared. An older advisor approaches the official, now named Jarius, with an urgent report. He offers to shed some light on Thrush's recent behavior, much to Jarius's surprise. Back in Dolga, the fortress command confirms the worst. War machines are active on the border. Roge questions the sudden hostility, but Ekaterina decides they'll handle the golems themselves. Because of course she does. A knight voices his concern, suggesting they wait for the rest of the Saraphim knights. Ekaterina explains her rationale, certain her father and the king would agree with her choice. But another knight steps forward, telling them not to worry about the kingdom's strength. She declares with absolute confidence that they are strong and fear no magical weapon. Roge seems to understand, a small smile of relief on his face. He then volunteers to go to the capital, planning to use the royal family's magic for a barrier. Lilianne is stunned as he explains this will buy them time to handle the golems. But she notices her master is sweating profusely, his breathing heavy and strained. She realizes with dawning horror that he must have exhausted his mana in the last fight. Later, Roge prepares to leave, telling her to rest, but she insists on taking over. Lilianne watches him go, knowing he's the one who truly needs to recover. He gently pats her head, a silent gesture of trust and reassurance. Roge puts on a brave face, insisting this is when he must do his best for the people. Though worried, Lilianne accepts his decision, placing her faith in her master once more. The scene shifts to the royal castle of Dolga, where the news has already arrived. The king questions the sudden betrayal from a nation that was once a trusted ally. He turns to his advisor, Pelvis, seeking answers in a rapidly escalating crisis. Yes, his name is Pelvis. The advisor speculates their true goal might be an ancient weapon hidden within the kingdom. The king scoffs at the idea, unable to believe the new emperor would be so foolish. Pelvis muses on other possibilities, even briefly suspecting a rogue prince's involvement. But when his guards ask for orders, the king remains resolute, trusting his knights to handle the threat. A guard bursts in, reporting that evacuations near the border have already begun. The king laughs heartily, filled with pride for his kingdom's swift response. But his expression hardens as he considers the threat of enemy cannons. Pelvis points out the grim reality. The king's mana can only shield half the capital. Worse still, their main force of mages is tied up at the border and can't return. Pelvis muses that now would be the perfect time for a certain sage to make a dramatic entrance. And right on cue, a pillar of teleportation magic erupts in the throne room. Talk about perfect timing. The royal guards panic, shouting to protect the king from the impossibly precise intrusion. One guard draws his sword, fearing an enemy attack, but the king recognizes the energy. The light fades to reveal Roge, looking exhausted but ready for what comes next. Roge is completely stunned by the sudden change of scenery. The king wastes no time, grabbing him in a bone-crushing hug of relief. He declares Roge's arrival a miracle, taking full credit for it himself. After a quick briefing, the king agrees with Ekaterina's plan to defend the border. He confirms they need Roge's help and is told the magic circle is ready on the roof. As they head upstairs, Roge questions the motive behind Kaiserland's sudden attack. The king has no answers, leaving Roge to ponder the escalating crisis. But Pelvis interrupts, revealing a recent incident during his visit to the Empire. The word accident immediately puts Roge on high alert. The advisor explains he was attacked but kept it quiet to avoid an international incident. So much for diplomacy. The king demands answers, his patience clearly worn thin by the secrecy. Pelvis reveals his suspicions fall on Prince Thrush and the new head mage Isabel. The scene cuts to the very two people in question, sneaking through a dark alleyway. Thrush's composure shatters as he screams at Isabel to be quiet. He internally blames her for the entire disaster, his mind racing with panic. He knows that if her mistake is discovered, she'll face certain execution. A voice from his past urges him to do his duty, but he can only scream in defiance. Isabel finally snaps, calling him out for his selfish and unprincely behavior. Guess the honeymoon is over. The prince's face contorts in a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. His thoughts spiral, realizing his madness began the day he expelled Lilianne. He wonders if his descent began the moment he chose Isabel as his fiancée. Or perhaps it was when he first felt the sting of inferiority, the gap between him and another. His mind drifts further back to the loss of his mother and the cold gaze of his father. The prince is left with one terrifying question. When exactly did he lose his mind? A fragmented memory surfaces, a fleeting glimpse of someone else's contentment, but it's drowned out by the memory of Isabel, who was never satisfied. And then there was Lilianne, a constant, painful reminder of what he'd thrown away. His thoughts fracture, flashing back to the burning ambition that defined his fiancée. He remembers standing in his father's shadow, feeling small and insignificant. In the end, he was just a lost boy, unable to find his own way in the dark. His spiral continues, haunted by the simple, desperate desire to have been chosen. He stumbles back, completely lost in his own mind as Isabel looks on in shock. The prince collapses against the wall, the weight of his failures finally crushing him. He never wanted praise for his magic. He wanted someone to believe in his royal ambition. He blames everyone else, convinced they are the ones who made him into nothing. But Isabel has no time for his self-pity, demanding he snap out of it. She begs him for help, but Thrush is too far gone to even hear her pleas. Her anger fades to concern as she realizes the prince is truly and utterly broken. But her attention is suddenly drawn to a potential way out of this mess. In the darkness of the woods, a small stone structure offers a glimmer of escape. Isabel peeks from behind a stone wall, a glimmer of hope on her face. She scrambles through the opening, convinced she's finally found her freedom, but her escape is cut short by the imposing figure of Jarius and his guards. The official's eyes burn with fury as he demands to know where the prince is. From the shadows, Thrush begs them to wait, insisting it's all a misunderstanding. He points down a dark corridor, claiming he tried to convince the prince to turn back. In a shocking betrayal, he shoves Isabel forward, framing her as a distraction. She can only stare up in disbelief as the man she followed abandons her. So much for that engagement. But Jarius sees right through the act, noting how Thrush has always used his weakness as a shield. The prince's panic fades into a cold smirk, surprised that Jarius ever cared at all. Jarius lays out their crimes, disrespecting Pelvis, expelling Lilianne, and Isabel's incompetence. But Thrush just smirks, blaming Jarius for not being around to babysit him. Jarius roars back, furious at himself for ever trusting the reckless prince. The insult seems to land, a flicker of anger crossing Thrush's face. He quickly recovers his composure, taunting his overly serious brother. Isabel screams at him to shut up, not appreciating his cavalier attitude. Jarius explains the grim reality. A message has been sent, but war seems inevitable. A conflict of this scale could easily escalate into a devastating world war. And to prevent that, he has one terrible option: find a pair of scapegoats. His solution is simple and brutal, a public execution for them both. Jarius's cold resolve is unwavering as he passes his grim judgment. The sentence sends Isabel into a spiral of terrified denial, screaming that she won't die. With a simple command, he orders his guards to seize the condemned pair. But before they can move, the entire area erupts in a violent inferno. Isabel can only scream as the flames engulf everything around her. In the heart of the blaze, however, Thrush is completely calm. He stands untouched, revealing himself as the master of this fiery chaos. Well, that's one way to snap out of a funk. Even Jarius is stunned, forced to acknowledge his brother's incredible power. Thrush finally speaks, asking his brother to explain his cryptic past advice. He wants to understand what it truly means to broaden his horizons. Thrush accuses Jarius of never understanding, claiming he was chosen from the start. The prince's eyes burn with a desperate question. What is his purpose in this world? Jarius roars back, asking if this chaos is the meaning his brother was searching for. But Thrush's reason shatters, blaming their father for his mother's death and his own pain. His rage turns to pure jealousy, screaming that Jarius was chosen just for being the firstborn. He desperately tries to justify his actions, demanding to know what truly separates them. The guards can only watch in dismay as the royal family drama unfolds. Jarius looks down on him with pure disdain, calling him a disgrace to their family. As Isabel sobs in the flames, Thrush seems to finally realize the gravity of his tantrum. He resigns himself to his fate, thinking it's better if the whole world burns with him. Isabel sobs, terrified of ending up incompetent and useless. Her deepest fear is to be left unchosen, a thought that triggers a distant memory. The scene shifts to the past, where a young Jarius sits studying alone. He turns his head, sensing a quiet presence in the room. A voice calls out, telling a young Thrush there's no need to hide. The little prince timidly peeks out from behind the grand doors. Sharius pats his head, asking him to keep their meeting a secret from their father. The young thrush admits he thinks his older brother is lucky to be heir to the throne, but Sharius confesses he's envious of his brother's freedom to play. The grass is always greener, even for royalty. Thrush then asks if studying hard will let him share his brother's burden. The young prince declares that if they share the burden, his brother can play too. The innocent offer leaves a young Sharius completely speechless. But Thrush realizes it's wrong to shirk responsibility, vowing to become king himself. He offers his brother a simple, heartfelt thank you for the thought. Sharius smiles, glad to have a brother he can one day rely on. The memory of that pure, simple moment fills the young prince with joy. But in the present, that memory only brings tears as Thrush completely breaks down. Sharius can only watch, his face a mask of frustration and regret. Reinforcements arrive, urging Sharius to fall back as the prince continues to sob. But Thrush suddenly snaps out of it, grabbing Isabel and making a run for it. So much for brotherly bonding. Sharius can only watch as his brother drags Isabel into the inferno. He roars in frustration, demanding to know what other chaos has been unleashed. A grim realization dawns on him. The Empire's anti-air cannons are likely active. Elsewhere, Thrush demands Isabel open a portal across the border. She panics, warning that a rushed teleportation spell could be a death sentence. But their pursuers are closing in, a young mage preparing to intercept them. Another young guard throws up a shield, blocking Thrush's fiery escape route. Isabel announces the portal is ready, their desperate escape plan complete. But the look on Thrush's face is no longer one of fear, but of cold intent. Back at the fortress, Lilianne watches as enemy magic fills the sky. The invasion has begun. Ekaterina notes that Lilianne looks exhausted, but the young mage brushes it off. The Knight Commander then offers a rare moment of gratitude for Lilianne's defense of the fortress. Lilianne humbly explains she was just inspired by Ekaterina's own determination. The commander seems to accept this, acknowledging that giving one's all is part of being human. On the horizon, the mechanical army of Kaiserland advances, a tide of steel and magic. Ekaterina admits that despite her confidence, her knights are outmatched by the sheer numbers. She swallows her pride, finally asking the young mage for her assistance in the coming battle. The unexpected request leaves Lilianne completely stunned. A truce, perhaps? But their conversation is cut short as streaks of light fill the night sky. They immediately recognize the attack, the Empire's dreaded surface-to-air cannons. A knight panics, realizing the cannon fire is aimed directly at the royal capital. But Ekaterina remains surprisingly calm, certain that everything will be fine. Lilianne shares her confidence, placing her unwavering faith in her master's presence there. With the capital's defense settled in her mind, she turns her attention to the border. She volunteers to take on the Golem army herself, her resolve now absolute. Meanwhile, in the capital, medical units scramble to prepare for the worst. A senior member sarcastically welcomes a new recruit to the unfolding disaster. Talk about a rough first day. But the recruit's attention is drawn to a strange sound echoing through the night. Outside, the sky is filled with a beautiful, yet terrifying shower of magical lights. On the castle roof, Raj looks up at the incoming barrage, grimly noting the sheer scale of the attack. Pelvis confirms the national barrier isn't ready, and the threat is already within their borders. But Raj stands firm on the rooftop, assuring the advisor he'll manage somehow. He admits to himself that his mana is nearly depleted, but he has no other choice. He closes his eyes, focusing his remaining energy and calling upon the power of Ancientia. A massive, intricate magic circle materializes in the sky, blanketing the entire capital. Even Pelvis is left speechless, stunned by the sheer scale of the instantaneous spell. Roge grits his teeth, pouring every last ounce of his strength into the casting. His eyes snap open with fierce determination, pushing the spell's boundaries even further. The magic circle expands to an impossible size, dwarfing the entire city below. Pelvis realizes in awe that the barrier is larger than the capital itself, a single move to end the assault. With a final roar, Roge unleashes a counterspell of his own, the Meteor Shower. His magic circle erupts, sending a volley of brilliant energy into the night sky. The spell streaks upwards, meeting the rain of enemy cannon fire head-on. The resulting flash is so intense it blinds the onlookers below, even knocking Pelvis off his feet. From the distant fortress, the knights can only watch as a new sun rises over the capital. Pelvis, however, just smiles, looking like he expected nothing less from the sage. Roge's counterattack rains down, neutralizing the threat before it ever reached the city. He finally catches his breath, confirming with a weary smile that he got them all. But there's no time to rest. A guard announces the national barrier is ready for casting. The man's to-do list is getting ridiculous. Pelvis can't comprehend it, wondering how Roge has any mana left after everything he's just done. Pelvis can only stare, wondering what kind of training could create such a monster. The king checks on Raj, who brushes it off, insisting they must hurry with the barrier. With no time to waste, the king closes his eyes, gathering his own immense magical energy. On the castle roof, he calls upon the ancient power of his kingdom to awaken its ultimate defense. He unleashes the spell, the Ancientia King's Unbreakable, a barrier to protect all of Dolga. A colossal wall of pure blue energy erupts from the earth, sealing the nation's borders. Across the kingdom, a young girl looks out her window, confused by the sudden, strange dawn. Civilians gather in the streets, staring up in awe at the magical shield protecting their homes. Even the medical staff can only pause and watch, their faces a mix of shock and relief. At the border, a knight cheers, confident that the king's barrier will hold back the Golem army. Roge is on his last legs, panting heavily as the toll of his magic finally hits him. The king supports him, but Roge waves off the concern, insisting this is his duty as a mage. Pelvis looks on worriedly as a guard announces the teleportation circle is ready for use. Roge asks for an escort, but the king enthusiastically volunteers to carry him personally. The sage is left completely speechless by the king's unique offer of assistance. The king tries to princess carry a mortified Roge, who insists he's fine, so much for maintaining his dignity. As Raj screams in embarrassment, Pelvis can only watch, musing on the king's reassuring nature. Back in Kaiserland, Isabel is captured, claiming Thrush forced her to teleport him to the Dolga border. Ciarius is stunned, unable to comprehend why his brother would willingly run into the heart of the conflict. She explains Thrush wanted to stop the Golems, leaving Ciarius to wonder what his foolish brother is planning. A knight reports that the king, the medical division, and Roge have arrived at the fortress. Inside, the medical team is in a state of controlled chaos, one member trying to calm his panicking colleague. The cause of the commotion is the king himself, carrying a deeply embarrassed Roge like a trophy. The head medic snaps them back to reality, ordering them to help the others instead of staring. But as they get back to work, a violent coughing fit echoes from a nearby room. The young medic cautiously peeks inside, drawn by the unsettling sound. His concern turns to alarm as a spray of blood hits the stone floor. He stares in disbelief, completely unprepared for the scene before him. It's Prince Thrush, collapsed and weak, the botched teleportation having taken a serious toll. He looks up weakly, asking if he's finally made it to the kingdom of Dolga. The king greets Ekaterina as Roge leans wearily on his staff. She apologizes for her informal attire, but the king waves off her concern. But Roge's only concern is for Lilianne, frantically asking where she's gone. He's stunned to learn she's gone to face the Golem army all by herself. The scene flashes back to the fortress walls, where Lilianne insisted on taking the lead. Ekaterina had questioned if a single mage could possibly stop the entire army. Lilianne admitted the weapons may have been altered since her time there. But she knew her master was spent, and the knight stood no chance alone. Inspired by Raj, she declared her desire to use her power for the people. Talk about a glow-up. Her unwavering resolve left even the proud knight commander speechless. Ekaterina reports that some time has passed, with still no word from Lilianne on the front lines. She explains the plan. Let the Golems hit the barrier, then the knights will strike. The king and his advisor can only watch the tense exchange unfold. But Roge's worry boils over, and he decides he has to go after her. The king immediately stops him, forbidding him from leaving as a royal command. He refuses to send a powerful but exhausted mage into a fight without a plan. Roge protests, but the king correctly points out that he's not thinking clearly. The accusation lands, leaving the powerful sage completely stunned. He grips his staff, wondering why he's losing his composure so easily. His mind flashes back to Lilianne's words, her determination a mirror of his own past. Roge scoffs at his own noble words, feeling like a complete fraud. He can't even protect the one person who matters most to him. The king apologizes, understanding the weight of his royal command, but Roge admits that Lilianne is more important to him than his own life. He grips his staff, declaring he'll force his way through if necessary. Ekaterina draws her blade, prepared to stop him by force. The knights follow her lead, their swords raised against the very man who just saved them. The king, however, seems to be considering another option entirely. Suddenly, a brilliant green light engulfs the room, interrupting the tense moment. The head medic stares in disbelief, recognizing the source of the magic. The medic is furious, scolding the patient for using his precious magic so carelessly. The head medic joins in, reminding him that he should have reported the injury first. But the injured man is no ordinary soldier. He's Prince Thrush of the Kaiserland Empire. The revelation sends a shockwave through the room, stunning both Roge and the king. Ekaterina's eyes flash with fury, her suspicion immediately ignited. She puts her blade to his throat, demanding to know why an enemy prince is in their fortress. Thrush can only tremble, his body racked with pain from the botched teleportation. He claims he came to deliver a message directly to King Sieg. The king looks less than convinced. Held captive by the Knight Commander, the prince looks utterly defeated and broken. His hands lie limp on the floor, a picture of complete and total surrender. The prince claims full responsibility, calling this tragedy a result of his own carelessness. He explains the chaos back home, with their capital in flames and their mages overwhelmed. With desperation in his voice, he insists that his empire never wanted this war. He prostrates himself on the floor, begging for Dolga's help to stop the rampaging weapons. King Sieg looks down at him, his face an unreadable mask of stone. Roge watches nervously, but the king's expression gives nothing away. Even Ekaterina and her knights can only stand by in stunned silence. The king finally breaks the tension, ordering the disgraced prince to rise. He declares that Dolga never wanted war, tabling the blame for a later conference. He turns to Pelvis, agreeing that their immediate focus must be on damage control. Pelvis questions why the prince came in person, but Thrush simply thanks him for his past visit. The prince reveals the golems have an emergency stop function, one that requires royal mana. He explains he's the only royal with mana, so he had himself teleported here to help. But he admits he has no training and doesn't know how to use his power. So he's got the key but no idea where the lock is. Roge immediately steps up, offering to guide the prince through the entire process. Pelvis voices his concern, warning Thrush of the extreme danger he's walking into. But the prince is resolute, ready to face any punishment if it means stopping this disaster himself. The king turns to Roge, admitting he knows there's no stopping him from going to Lilianne. Roge reveals his new plan. He can use Thrush's mana, prompting the king to call for a medic. He asks the head medic for his expert opinion on whether Roge has enough mana left for such a feat. The head medic gets right in Roge's face, demanding an honest report on his condition. His eyes glow with diagnostic magic, peering directly into the sage's depleted mana reserves. Roge looks on in terror, knowing his plan to save Lilianne hangs in the balance. The medic pulls back with a grim verdict. What Roge wants to do is simply not possible. He explains that while Roge's precision is beyond comprehension, there is a safer alternative. He suggests Roge borrow a small amount of mana from every member of the medical corps, but he sternly warns him not to be reckless, as their magic is for saving lives, not for heroic sacrifices. The king agrees with the plan, declaring that the kingdom must also pull its own weight. Ekaterina understands, confirming her knights will engage the golems as soon as they hit the barrier. With a new path forward, Roge's resolve hardens, promising he will stop them no matter what. As they fly, Thrush asks about Roge's connection to the king, forcing a very awkward explanation. Roge clarifies that he's Lilianne's master, the one who taught her everything she knows. The prince processes this new information, the tension between them growing thicker. Thrush then admits that Roge must despise him for what he did to Lilianne. He confesses he exiled her simply because he couldn't stand her attitude. Well, honesty is a start. Roge realizes the absurd irony of teaming up with the very man he planned to confront. But Thrush adds that he's happy to be with Lily again, much to Roge's confusion. The sage is left completely speechless by the prince's bizarre and contradictory confession. Thrush muses that despite her flaws, Lilianne is clearly cherished by those around her. They arrive to a sea of golems, and Roge confirms Lilianne is somewhere in the thick of it. On the battlefield, Lilianne unleashes a complex web of magic against a colossal golem. But her eyes widen in panic as she realizes the spell's formula is beyond her. She fears she's failing again, with the golem army mere minutes from the barrier. The familiar sting of self-doubt threatens to overwhelm her resolve. Suddenly, Raj flies down, carrying the prince and shouting her name. She's shocked to see her master, and even more so to see Thrush with him. Talk about an awkward reunion. She stammers his name, but Raj rushes forward without a word. He sweeps her into a tight embrace, his relief palpable. A deep blush colors her cheeks as he admits how glad he is that she's safe. He holds her close, confessing he was so worried his heart nearly stopped. Lilianne stammers an apology, completely flustered by his sudden display of affection. Roge immediately panics, wondering if he just crossed a line. Thrush just wonders if the old man is having a heat stroke. The prince cuts through the awkwardness, demanding to know if she can stop the golems. Lilianne explains the magic circle controlling the golem is impossibly complex. Roge gets a look for himself and is stunned by the absurdly intricate spell work. Thrush suspects it's Isabel's doing, a spell written in a secret court language. Roge is floored, realizing Lilianne has mastered these incredibly difficult magical languages. She reveals her plan. A momentary opening is all she needs to overwrite the system. But the trio stands before a colossal golem, the task looking more impossible by the second. Roge casually mentions he heard these things are also trashing Kaiserland, much to Lilianne's shock. Thrush admits his actions against her were unforgivable, blaming his own carelessness. He confesses that if she'd never been exiled, this disaster might have been averted. Roge interrupts the awkward apology tour with a suggestion for Lilianne. He proposes a 3-person plan to stop every single golem, even across the border. Lilianne is stunned as he explains she'll cast the final spell while he expands its range. But she immediately protests, knowing he's already pushed his mana to the absolute limit. Her desperate plea to save himself leaves Roge completely speechless. But their time is up. The first wave of golems begins to overload at the barrier. From the fortress walls, Ekaterina sees the mechanical army has finally arrived. With a battle cry, she leads the Knights of Zabelg into the fray to defend their home. The Knights of Dolga roar, charging forward with the pride of their kingdom. From the walls, the king and Pelvis watch the endless sea of golems approach the barrier. King Sieg's face is a mask of grim resolve, the weight of his nation on his shoulders. Roge realizes their time is up. The knights are already clashing with the enemy. Thrush turns to Lilianne, his voice cracking as he begs for her help. He prostrates himself, admitting his guilt, but pleading for a chance to fix this. Through his tears, he screams that all he has left is the desire to help his brother. Lilianne is stunned by his raw desperation, his fear of dying as nothing more than a monster. She hesitates, terrified for Roge's safety, but her master gently stops her protest. Roge offers a tired but confident smile, promising her that as her master, he'll be fine. Lilianne's expression is filled with a deep, lingering concern for her master. Roge can only offer a strained smile, acknowledging her unspoken fears. She makes a promise. When this is all over, they're going to have a long talk. She asks if he'll truly listen this time, her words hitting him with unexpected weight. His answer is simple and immediate, a promise to finally hear her out. The sincerity in his voice leaves her completely flustered and blushing. With the pact sealed, Thrush begins the incantation, calling on Kaiserland's guardians. A blinding light erupts from the main golem, the emergency stop sequence activating. Roge's staff flares with borrowed energy, preparing to amplify the spell's reach. Meanwhile, Ekaterina roars from the front lines, ordering all her knights to stop. From the fortress walls, King Sieg can only watch, his voice filled with concern for Roge. A colossal magic circle erupts, its brilliant blue light flooding the entire battlefield. The spell descends upon the golem army, draining the dark energy from their cores. Back in Kaiserland, a subordinate calls out to Jarius with an urgent report. He explains the golems have stopped, and a magic circle has covered the entire country. Jarius is stunned to hear that all their magical weapons deactivated at the same time. Lilianne stares up in awe, completely overwhelmed by the spell's impossible scale. Her eyes narrow with focus as Roge and Thrush pour their combined power into the incantation. Roge grits his teeth, his body trembling from the sheer force he's channeling. But Lilianne can only watch with growing dread, clutching her staff in worry for her master. The 3 mages stand as one, their combined power focused on a single goal. Lilianne begins the final incantation, a command to put the Steel Guardians to sleep. A silent command ripples through the battlefield, a wave of pure magical will. The spell takes hold, sending down a beam of light to neutralize the golem army. The massive magic circle blankets the sky, its deactivation code spreading across the land. Back in Kaiserland, Jarius rushes to witness the unbelievable event firsthand. He stares up at the sky, completely stunned by the impossible scale of the magic. He can only wonder if he's witnessing a miracle as the spell covers his entire nation. In the capital, the rampaging golems fall completely silent, their rampage over. Well, That's one way to clean up a mess. From the fortress walls, Ekaterina looks on, acknowledging that they've done it. Ekaterina offers a rare smile, finally acknowledging Lilianne as a worthy equal. On the fortress walls, the king and Pelvis share a hearty laugh of pure relief. Even the medical corps can relax, their services thankfully no longer needed. As the spell fades, the three mages are left completely drained on the battlefield. Roge turns to his student, his voice filled with exhaustion and concern. With a single tear, he offers her a simple, heartfelt thank you. Lilianne is taken aback by the raw emotion in her master's voice. She humbly tries to downplay her incredible part in saving two nations, but their quiet moment is shattered by a sudden, alarming sound. The sage finally collapses, his body giving out as his staff clatters to the ground. Looks like someone's overdue for a nap. Lilianne screams in terror as her master's body goes limp. He hits the ground, completely unconscious after pushing himself far beyond his limits. She rushes to his side, her desperate cries echoing across the silent battlefield. Raj's consciousness fades, the world dissolving into a peaceful blue haze. His last thought is of a long overdue, well-deserved rest. Sometime later, his eyes slowly flutter open to an unfamiliar ceiling. He awakens in a soft bed, bandaged and completely disoriented. His gaze shifts, drawn to a quiet presence in the room. He finds Lilianne sitting vigil by his bedside, lost in a book. Looks like someone's been worried sick. He calls out her name, and she looks up, startled to find him finally awake. Her relief finally breaks through, tears of joy streaming down her face. She lunges forward, tackling her master in a hug he was clearly not prepared for. She buries her face in his chest, overwhelmed by the fear she'd been holding back. Roge is still dazed, trying to piece together what happened after the battle. Their moment is interrupted by the head medic, who seems entirely unfazed by the scene. He explains that after Roge collapsed, Lilianne and the prince rescued him in a less than graceful fashion. The medic reveals Raj has been unconscious for 3 days, a testament to his overexertion. Raj feels his age, but the medic knows these two operate on a completely different level. He's told to rest up with a cryptic warning about some noisy visitors on the way. And right on cue, his other students appear, only to be shooed away by the protective medic. Lilianne stands guard, threatening anyone who might disturb her master's rest. She explains they're in a first-class room at the Royal Medical Corps Hospital. Roge tries to downplay his condition, but she reminds him it was life-threatening. As they look out at the sunset, she quietly confesses how terrified she truly was. Her words leave him speechless, the weight of her fear finally sinking in. He turns to her, admitting that he was scared too, much to her surprise. Lilianne can only stare, stunned by his rare and honest confession. Roge immediately gets flustered, turning away to hide his blushing face. So much for the stoic sage routine. But his admission has a profound effect on Lilianne, her own cheeks turning red. The two stand in an awkward, blushing silence, the air thick with unspoken feelings. Lilianne holds him to his promise, reminding him he agreed to listen to her story. Roge is caught off guard as she confirms he did, her face flushed with emotion. She explains she left to become a great mage, one who could stand beside him as an equal. But despite gaining confidence abroad, she felt she returned to him in a pathetic state. Their journey together only made her realize how vast the gap between them still was. Everywhere they went, it was always Roge who received the praise and thanks. Her composure finally breaks as she admits he just kept shining brighter, leaving her behind. The feeling of helplessness reminded her of her lonely past, of getting nowhere on her own. She hides her face, confessing how scared and pathetic she felt in his shadow. Talk about an inferiority complex. But Roge turns the tables, telling her that she's the amazing one, with a potential that has always surprised him. Roge knows that no matter what he says, she'll twist his praise into sarcasm. He turns the criticism inward, hating the part of himself that's always been afraid. He confesses he took her in without a second thought, being an orphan himself. He admits he constantly questioned his ability to be a parent, especially to a girl. In the end, he was just a coward who pushed her away, unable to express himself. He bows his head, claiming he was just a man praised for doing what he wanted. The master she admired was just an excuse for his failure to be a proper father. Talk about a therapy session. But Lilianne counters, saying that without her magic she wouldn't even exist. Roge looks up, insisting that her past has nothing to do with him. She looks down, blushing, admitting she finally realized that on their journey. She thinks of the medical corps, who stood bravely against an unseen enemy. She remembers the love that drove others to protect their families at any cost. She recalls Ekaterina's conviction and Thrush's desperate attempt to save his brother. A single tear escapes as she processes the raw emotion she's witnessed. She turns to Raj, her cheeks flushed as she prepares to speak her heart. She finally confesses that she loves him, with every fiber of her being. The words hang in the air, leaving her master completely and utterly speechless. She declares that nothing he does can change that fact. Her love is absolute. Roj's brain completely short-circuits, his composure shattering into a million flustered pieces. But after her bold confession, Lilianne is suddenly overcome with shyness herself. Roj stammers, trying to deflect by calling her a daughter. The classic she's like family defense. He suggests she find someone else, but she hits him with a childhood promise. She reminds him he agreed to marry her, adding she called dibs before Ekaterina. That promise was the fuel for her ambition, all to be worthy of standing by his side. She declares that nothing else matters, not age, not the past, not what others think. With everything on the line, she begs him to finally see her as she is. Her voice cracks with emotion, a desperate plea for him to understand. But the intensity of her own confession leaves her flustered and hiding her face. Roj finally speaks, admitting he has no confidence in himself. She snaps back, asking if he thinks she's any different, as they both devolve into a panic. Roj stammers, calling himself a coward who can't give her an answer right now. Through her tears, Lilianne accepts that she'll just have to wait even longer for him. But her patience has its limits, as she bonks him for being over 40 and indecisive. She looks at him with unwavering resolve, promising to wait as long as it takes, because no matter what happens, she will always love her master. She declares she's not like him. She defines her own worth, echoing Ekaterina's words. A soft, confident smile spreads across her face, her heart finally at peace. Roj can only smile back, gently suggesting they head back inside. Smooth dodge, old man. He realizes that while she's grown up, he still sees her as his student, his daughter. And it's a feeling he admits he just can't seem to let go of. He questions if he truly wants to be with her in that way, admitting he has no clear answer. But for Lilianne's sake, he resolves to learn to treasure himself and stop being afraid. Because when she declares her love so clearly, he wants to be a man worthy of it. Meanwhile, in the Kaiserland Empire, Thrush and Isabel kneel before the royal court to face their judgment. Sarius delivers the sentence: they are hereby expelled from the kingdom of Dolga. And in a shocking turn, they are also exiled from their own empire. Talk about getting fired on your day off. A scarred Dolgan official watches the proceedings with a stoic expression. Sarius tells his disgraced brother to stand, saying he no longer needs to show him respect. The Dolgan official questions if Sarius is certain about this course of action. But Sarius is resolute, thanking the man for accepting the terms and upholding Dolga's honor. The Dolgan official acknowledges the heavy price that comes with leadership. As Thrush is led away in chains, his brother's voice stops him in his tracks. Sarius calls out his name, demanding one final answer. He needs to know why Thrush pushed himself to the very brink of death. The former prince dismisses it all as a simple passing whim. He explains that after his emotional breakdown, his purpose became crystal clear. Sarius can only listen, finally understanding his brother's desperate act. But a shadow of envy still flickers in the disgraced prince's eyes. He thinks of Lilianne, jealous of the master who chose to guide and protect her. He realizes that despite her humble origins, she has found a happiness he never could. He reflects on his fate, realizing he has become nobody with nothing left. But Sarius offers one last piece of advice: to do his best to live well. He clarifies this isn't an order from a king, but a plea from a brother. The emperor's cold facade cracks, revealing the man beneath the crown. He explains their parents shielded Thrush from politics out of love, not neglect. Sarius confesses he was just a tool for their father, envying his brother's freedom. The grass is always greener, even when your lawn is an entire empire. As Thrush is led away, Sarius's voice trails off, his thoughts turning inward. He remembers the simple joy of watching his little brother play without a care. That was all that ever mattered to him. A simple, pure happiness. A young Sarius looks on, a memory of how far they've drifted from that simple past. Sarius admits their sins are far too great to ever be atoned for. He pulls his brother into a tearful embrace, begging him to live for others now. He calls himself a fool, but says as a brother he still believes in Thrush. The raw, unexpected faith leaves the former prince completely stunned. Thrush breaks down, sobbing that his foolish brother should have let him burn. He thinks if he had died, Sarius would have been spared the burden of the crown. The scene shifts to the past, to an orphanage where another child has been abandoned. The head matron dismisses the baby as a burden, caring only about the money. Looks like we found the villain of this origin story. A young Lilianne overhears the cruel words, learning she's seen as a nuisance. Her lonely existence is made worse by the other children, who bully her relentlessly. The other children mock her, pulling her hair and calling it dirty. They shove her into the mud, taunting her as the princess of the Mud Kingdom. Through her tears, a spark of defiance still burns in the young girl's eyes. But the matron offers no comfort, only scorn for her messy state. She's publicly humiliated, doused with a bucket of cold water. Even her handmade dolls are torn apart and left for trash. She clings to the last remaining one, her only friend in this cruel place. But the matron rips it away, declaring it garbage just like her. The torment turns violent as a hand yanks her by the hair. The children decide her hair would make a great new doll. Talk about a bad haircut. The matron's voice cuts through the air, a constant threat of violence. That night, a small figure sneaks outside, drawn to a window's warm light. Young Lilianne's eyes widen, witnessing a world she's never known. She clutches the tattered remains of her only friends. Huddled in the cold, she tries to make herself as small as possible. But a flicker of hope still remains in her lonely heart. Through the glass, she sees a family, whole and happy. A painful longing fills her, a belief that her own parents are out there somewhere. But back at the orphanage, her quiet nature is seen as arrogance. The other girls plot against her, their jealousy twisting into cruel intent. The girls reveal their destination, a town near a volcano rumored to be a Bahamut's lair. But the lead bully scoffs, far more concerned about the heat damaging her precious luggage. The mention of the volcano, however, sparks a desperate hope in young Lilianne. The bully seizes the opportunity, feeding her a cruel lie about her parents being seen there. She reveals the matron's true motive, keeping Lilianne for the support money she provides. With this false hope planted, Lilianne is urged to run and find the peddlers heading that way. The bullies share a smug look, their malicious plan to get rid of her set in motion. That evening, a peddler's wagon stops to rest at the base of the very same mountain. A small stowaway peeks out from the back, her eyes fixed on the distant volcano. She asks about the legendary beast, but her mind is clearly set on a much bigger prize. As the peddlers sleep, Lilianne peeks out, her escape plan in motion. She clutches a small bag of stolen food, apologizing for the necessary theft. With a final look back, she slips away into the darkness of the woods. She runs as fast as her small legs can carry her, clinging to her dolls. She finally arrives at the desolate mountain, calling out for her parents. But the barren landscape offers no answers, only a chilling, empty silence. The ground grows hot beneath her feet as she ventures deeper into the volcano's territory. Exhausted and afraid, she huddles behind a rock, her hope beginning to fade. Suddenly, her eyes widen in sheer terror as she senses an immense presence. The legendary Bahamut appears before her, and the little girl is face to face with a god. The terrified girl can only manage a stammered greeting to the colossal beast. The Bahamut's golden eyes narrow, its attention now fixed on the tiny intruder. Her survival instinct screams at her, and her only thought is to run. She trips in her panic, scattering her stolen food and her only friends across the ground. The volcanic heat is suffocating, searing her lungs with every desperate breath. Leaving everything behind, she scrambles deeper into the mountain's caves. The intense heat takes its toll, and a trickle of blood runs from her nose. The Bahamut peers over the rocks, seemingly more interested in her dropped belongings than her. She pushes onward, her small body fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. But her strength finally gives out, and she collapses in a heap of tears and exhaustion. Her only friends, the handmade dolls, lie abandoned on the scorched earth. The little girl's spirit finally breaks, her cries echoing through the desolate mountain. But a familiar voice cuts through the darkness, calling her name from a distant memory. Lilianne's eyes flutter open, pulled from the depths of her painful past. She finds Raj smiling down at her, playfully calling her master. She apologizes for dozing off, but he reassures her with a gentle smile. Raj looks down at his formal white attire, joking that it feels like a wedding. Lilianne blushes, admitting the thought makes her happy, and that he looks wonderful. Well, that's one way to get a confession. He returns the compliment, telling her that her hair is truly beautiful. His words strike a deep chord, healing a wound she's carried since childhood. She admits that deep down, she always knew her parents wouldn't be there. But she's grateful, because that path led her to him and she's finally happy. Meanwhile, in a dark forest, two shadowy figures watch from a distance. One of them, Constanze, marvels at the power that single-handedly stopped Kaiserland's army. A green-eyed man gives his subordinate a simple order to stand by. But his next command is far more chilling. When it's time to kill, show no hesitation. Constanze can only tremble and agree, clearly terrified of his master. Back in the royal capital of Dolga, the night is deceptively peaceful. But that peace is shattered as cloaked figures materialize from thin air. This city just can't catch a break. Dark energy streaks through the sky aimed directly at the heart of the capital. A citizen looks up in alarm as the dark energy streaks across the sky. On a rooftop, one of the cloaked assailants questions the need for decoys. Their leader explains it's not about trust, their target is the great sage himself. With a sinister smile, he reveals their goal, to eliminate both Roge and the king. Elsewhere, Roge sighs in relief, exhausted from his public appearance. He admits to Lilianne that he nearly panicked having to greet the crowds. She reveals she just used a pre-written speech template from her court mage days. Lilianne daydreams that the celebration felt like a wedding, much to Roge's embarrassment. Their conversation is cut short as a royal guard announces a summons from the king. Roge and Lilianne can only look on, confused by the unexpected call. They are led to the magnificent royal library, a place Roge hasn't visited since his youth. He reminisces about his childhood as Lilianne reminds him of their afternoon meeting. The guard's stiff formality makes Roge visibly uncomfortable. They are warned to be careful as they approach the entrance to the forbidden library. Lilianne feels the weight of their surroundings, while Roge notes the tight security. He explains he earned access long ago by deciphering ancient grimoires for the kingdom. Reaching for the door, he wonders what the king could possibly want with them. Inside, King Sieg's sharp gaze reveals he's been waiting for their arrival. But the king is far from formal, casually enjoying a rice ball in the ancient room. Roge and Lilianne are stunned by the king's blatant disregard for the sacred library. So much for royal decorum. Roge immediately scolds the king for his casual attire and snacking in a sacred place. The king offers a rice ball to Lilianne, who politely declines, ever the stickler for rules. He calls them a nagging pair, more concerned with his meal than the sanctity of the library. Getting to the point, the king grants them full access to the forbidden library and its laboratory. The mood turns serious as he explains a new threat, an ancient miasma appearing across the kingdom. He formally requests their help, revealing the brooch he gave them was for this very purpose. The brooch is the Order of Archmage, a symbol of authority that grants them unrestricted access. Roge breathes a sigh of relief, realizing this official pass will keep the guards off his back. But just as they process the news, the king reveals there's one more thing he needs to give them.
He places a small, ornate silver box on the table, its contents a complete mystery.
Roge and Lilianne lean in, their curiosity piqued as the king urges them to open the box. He lifts the lid, revealing a strange white rectangular object resting on a velvet cushion. The king explains it's an ancient relic, said to contain the soul of a magic preacher. Lilianne is stunned by its value, while the king nervously calls it a strange little device. He admits the royal mages deemed it useless, hoping Roge's expertise can unlock its secrets. Roge holds the object, completely baffled by its smooth, unfamiliar material. Looks like someone's never seen a smartphone before. Unable to determine its purpose by sight alone, he decides to analyze it with magic. He casts a powerful analysis spell, a complex blue magic circle materializing before him. In response, the strange relic erupts with a brilliant, pulsating pink light. The sudden reaction leaves all three of them completely stunned and confused. The relic fights back, its pink energy clashing with Roge's analysis spell. He cries out in alarm as the object begins draining his mana at an incredible rate. Roge grits his teeth, struggling to maintain control against the overwhelming force. With a final brilliant flash of light, the energy transfer abruptly stops. The effort leaves the great sage completely spent, collapsing into Lilianne's arms. The king stares in disbelief, wondering what could possibly drain Roge so completely. Suddenly, a voice emanates from the relic, complimenting Roge on his impressive mana reserves. Roge and Lilianne can only stare, completely dumbfounded that the ancient artifact can speak. The king asks if it's truly the preacher, only to be rudely dismissed as an old man. Well, that's one way to greet royalty. As the king processes this literal interpretation, the relic introduces itself with a formal title. The relic suddenly comes to life, cheerfully calling out the name Akira. Its enthusiastic greeting is met with stunned silence from the completely baffled trio. The relic begins to tell a story from over 2 millennia ago of 2 powerful children who descended upon Dolga. One was Akira, a kind and brave mage who brought civilization and prosperity to the land. But his counterpart, Sattoru, was driven by greed, turning his blade against the very people they'd helped. After a long and devastating war, Satoru's rebellion was crushed and he was executed for his crimes. Akira's powerful spells were passed down to the royal family, and his dangerous weapons were sealed away. Roge realizes he's speaking to the will of the legendary evangelist himself, who seems surprised to learn he's dead. The king tries to rationalize its strange speech, chalking it up to a weird foreign accent. To prove its identity beyond a doubt, the relic offers to show them a little trick. The relic projects glowing magic circles analyzing the 3 stunned onlookers. It praises Lilianne's vast potential, declaring her a natural fit for ancient magic. It then turns to the king, bluntly assessing him as more of a warrior than a mage. But when it analyzes Roge, the relic can only express its complete surprise. The king is baffled as the relic notes Roge's skill is on par with the legendary founders. It reveals its activation required mana equal to Akira's, a feat it never expected from a stranger. Lilianne is confused by its casual tone, but the relic cheerfully calls everyone a friend. It clarifies that it's not the man himself, but a consciousness he left behind. Guess ancient super AIs are just built different. Before his death, Akira imprinted his knowledge onto the device to guide future generations. The king's eyes widen with a world-shattering realization. They can revive a lost age of magic. But the relic admits its memory is shot, its only function now being detailed mana analysis. Seeing an opportunity, the king orders a stunned Roge to take the ancient device with him. The relic cheerfully suggests he wear it like a keychain, much to the sage's horror. The king reveals this was his plan all along, as the relic learns its new companion is royalty. King Sieg casually dismisses Roge's concerns, leaving the sage completely overwhelmed. But Lilianne senses a contradiction, questioning why a public tool needed so much power to activate. The relic offers no answers, admitting its knowledge is fragmented and unreliable at best. The king wisely notes that history is written by the victors, hinting at a hidden truth. With the discussion tabled, the king entrusts the relic to Roge's care before departing. The relic praises King Sieg's character, then reveals its original master died from mana exhaustion. The revelation leaves both Roge and Lilianne completely stunned. The relic explains that Akira was pressured to constantly use his power, a common fate for royalty. As they walk, Roge admits he's embarrassed to be seen in his formal wear. The relic assumes they're aristocrats, but Lilianne clarifies the outfits are just for the ceremony. Roge nervously asks the ancient AI to keep a low profile around other people. But the relic just wants to chat, loudly questioning if Roge is just a goddamn introvert. Lilianne tries to praise her master's character, but the relic just laughs in his face. They arrive at their destination, thanked by the guards for their hard work. But as they step inside, they're met with an unexpected sight. The grand meeting room is completely empty, leaving them to wonder where everyone is. Roge is sent stumbling as someone barrels right into him in the doorway. An irate woman in a military uniform immediately begins to berate them. She loudly questions their manners, demanding they move out of her way. Her expression is one of pure, unadulterated annoyance. Her blue-haired companion quickly apologizes, trying to calm his rude colleague. He reminds her that these are the very heroes they're here to meet, Roge and Lilianne. The woman leans in, studying Roge's face with a look of dawning recognition. Her intense, judgmental gaze makes the great sage sweat bullets. She recalls hearing he collapsed from mana exhaustion, bluntly calling the act stupid. With a condescending smirk, she asks if he's gotten any stronger at all. Well, so much for a hero's welcome. Roge is completely lost, wondering why this woman speaks with such casual familiarity. The irate mage leans in, impatiently demanding to know what his problem is. With an awkward smile, Roge politely asks if they might have met somewhere before. The 4 of them stand in a tense, awkward silence in the empty hall. His question sends the woman into an absolute rage, her face contorted in disbelief. Lilianne whispers an urgent explanation. This is Tia, a top mage he met 2 decades ago. She adds that Tia is now a high-ranking Saraphim, considered the kingdom's greatest mage. Enraged, Tia bonks him on the head, yelling that he should remember his own rival. She declares she's never forgiven him for some past slight and will prove her strength. Looks like someone's been holding a grudge for a while. As she storms away, a confused Roge asks what she's talking about, but Lilianne warns him to let it go. Her blue-haired companion apologizes for Tia's explosive personality. He formally introduces himself as Patrice, the 5th-ranked Saraphim. Roge explains they fought together during the demon invasion 5 years ago. Lilianne is impressed by his achievements, and the two share a polite introduction. Roge asks why he isn't ranked higher, and Patrice admits he stepped aside to avoid Tia's drama. Roge tries to downplay the importance of titles, whispering to a wide-eyed Lilianne. Just then, another mage storms in, complaining about tardiness while stealing Patrice's chair. Roge can only sigh, exhausted by the sheer pettiness of it all. Suddenly, a quiet, brown-haired girl grabs Lilianne's arm, startling her. Lilianne nervously asks what she wants, met only by an intense, unreadable stare. The quiet girl, Seraphim Melody, is internally gushing over Lilianne's appearance. Her thoughts spiral into a desperate need to know what shampoo Lilianne uses. Lilianne grows uncomfortable as Melody continues to stare, praising her angelic beauty. But Melody's admiration turns to confusion, wondering why this perfect girl is with such a plain-looking man. Roge is completely baffled by the intense scrutiny, while Melody daydreams of recruiting Lilianne. Their awkward moment is interrupted by another mage who speaks in dramatic, cryptic riddles. He's introduced as Simon, the 2nd-ranked Seraphim, and his flair for the dramatic is on full display. Patrice calmly translates Simon's poetic nonsense. He's just telling them to sit down because they're late. Roge can only comment on how unique his new colleagues seem to be. As they take their seats, Lilianne realizes Melody is still staring at her with unwavering intensity. The meeting is finally called to order as King Sieg storms in, demanding a head count. He immediately gets into it with Tia, who refuses to give up her stolen seat. Apparently, royal authority has its limits. Meanwhile, Pelvis checks in on Raj, who assures him he's feeling much better. But the king's mood sours again, furious that the general of the chivalric order is late. Right on cue, a thunderous stomp announces the arrival of the tardy general. The man Mordred cheerfully admits he forgot about the meeting and took a nap instead. Professionalism at its finest. Patrice tries to scold him, but Mordred just laughs, proud he even made it on the correct day. But the real chaos begins when Ekaterina introduces Roge as her future husband. Her father immediately challenges Roge to a fight, declaring it a prerequisite for marriage talks. Lilianne tries to intervene, but Ekaterina declares that one loss won't stop her from pursuing the sage. The room descends into chaos as everyone argues over Roge's marital status. Tia clutches her head, screaming at Patrice to silence the unbearable noise. The king can only sigh, realizing he's let his subordinates run far too wild. Simon begins a dramatic monologue, speaking of an abyss of unbridled darkness. Roge desperately tries to intervene, pleading for everyone to just calm down. But his voice is drowned out by a sudden, piercing shriek of magical energy. Ekaterina and the others are stunned, their argument completely forgotten. Lilianne covers her ears, wondering if this is the work of some malevolent force. Even the king and his general are caught off guard by the sonic assault. Well, so much for a productive meeting. Tia screams in agony, demanding to know the source of the irritating sound. The source of the chaos is the relic, which cheerfully admits it's making a sound humans hate. The king finally silences the room, promising to explain the relic's antics later. With order restored, the meeting turns to a grim report. Constance has vanished with the miasma sample. Tia immediately puts the pressure on Patrice, demanding he use his magic to locate the missing agent. But Bernard of the Medical Corps admits he's already tried everything, with no trace of her found. Patrice voices the fear on everyone's mind, wondering if she could already be dead. Tia coldly dismisses the idea, stating that anyone handling such a substance must be prepared for the worst. Patrice begs her to show some compassion, revealing Constanze and Bernard are childhood friends. But Tia is unmoved, telling him to search himself if he's so concerned. She's just a ray of sunshine, isn't she? The king grimly agrees with her logic, giving Bernard permission to leave and begin the search. Bernard wants to focus on another sample, but Tia declares the mage's core will assist. Patrice explains that with Bernard gone, the others can still continue the miasma research. Bernard and his subordinate listen, taking in the unexpected offer of help. Mordred laughs at Tia's abrasive attitude, but she snaps back, claiming it's all about efficiency. She tells Bernard to hurry back, promising to repay him for the trouble. It's the Tia equivalent of be safe. The king refocuses the meeting, explaining the miasma is a growing, unpredictable threat. He forbids anyone from acting alone, ordering them to report everything directly to Raj. Tia glares at Raj, clearly unhappy with the arrangement. Looks like their rivalry is back on. Later, outside the castle, Bernard tells his subordinate to stay behind. The young man is completely baffled, demanding to know why he's being left out. Bernard bluntly tells his subordinate he's a liability and must stay behind. He suggests the young man spend time with his master in the capital instead. As he prepares to leave, Roge's other student rushes forward with a gift. He offers Bernard a magic talisman, a last resort in case of an emergency. The student explains that tearing it will send an immediate distress signal. The blonde medic looks on with concern, begging Bernard not to push himself too hard. With a confident smile, Bernard accepts the help, admitting he's just a medic. As he leaves, Lauda worries about his captain, knowing he'd only get in the way. Another medic suggests Bernard feels guilty and wants the kid to take a day off. The student is surprised to learn the stern captain has such a considerate side. The royal capital is bathed in the warm light of a new day, but the peace is shattered by a fierce debate as Ekaterina makes her case for desserts. Roge's student counters with an equally passionate argument for meat. The two women face off, their culinary war leaving Raj's other students completely bewildered. The red-haired student lectures them, quoting her father on the importance of not being cheap. Lilianne jumps in, insisting it's about Roge's diet, but the student passionately details a steakhouse menu. Ekaterina objects, launching into a detailed sales pitch for a magical dessert cafe. The sheer richness of their suggestions makes one of the students feel physically ill. Guess not everyone has an iron stomach. Their public argument draws the attention of a stern-looking woman in a fancy uniform. She scolds them for their shameful display, but the group is too busy bickering to even notice. The woman Tia looks like she's on the verge of a complete and total breakdown. She smacks the general on the head, demanding the bickering idiots finally listen to her. Mordred casually asks if she's also out for food, earning a furious rebuke for his familiarity. But her real target is Roge, who is completely caught off guard by her sudden attention. She points to the relic on his waist, admitting she's been trying to figure out how to use it. She demands to know how he activated it, but the relic itself chimes in with the simple answer. The explanation sends Tia into a rage, completely stunned by the simplicity of it all. Roge can only watch in confusion as his rival completely loses her composure over the news. The bitter truth dawns on her. She simply didn't have enough mana to activate it herself. With that, she declares the junk useless to her and demands Roge hand it over. If she can't have it, no one can. Tia declares that even if she can't use ancient magic, she'll find the weapon Akira hid. Roge tries to explain it's a royal inheritance, but Tia couldn't care less about the details. As the others wonder about her obsession, Lilianne explains their brief meeting 20 years ago. The scene flashes back to a younger Tia, who recognized Roge's talent and offered him an apprenticeship. But Roge politely declined, citing his duty to a young Lilianne who fiercely claimed him as her own. The rejection left Tia utterly disgusted, a feeling she's apparently held on to ever since. His students are stunned she's held a grudge for 2 decades. Talk about being petty. Tia vows to make him regret his choice, promising to find the weapon and outshine his recent ceremony. She even declares she'll wear a better outfit, a threat that leaves Raj completely bewildered. Lilianne finally steps in, questioning how Tia can be so rude to the man who just saved their nation. Tia glares, her patience worn thin by Lilianne's passionate defense. But Lilianne fires back, calling out Tia's jealousy and demanding an apology. The kingdom's greatest mage is completely unfazed by the accusation. She finally recognizes Lilianne as the little girl from 2 decades ago. Tia turns the insult around, mocking Lilianne's unstable mana and questioning her right to be Roge's student. The sharp criticism hits its mark, leaving Lilianne completely stunned. Roge tries to play peacemaker, and Lilianne agrees to take this confrontation elsewhere. She declares with fiery resolve that she will prove her own worth through her actions. Tia scoffs at the idea, dismissing her as an arrogant follower riding on her master's coattails. With a smirk, she challenges her to a duel at the royal training grounds, because nothing solves a 20-year grudge like a magic fight. Tia gives Lilianne a 2-minute time limit, claiming she's far too busy for this nonsense. She raises the stakes, challenging Lilianne to prove her worth with the king's relic on the line. But Lilianne fires back with a savage comeback, calling out Tia's age and use of anti-aging magic. The insult hits its mark, leaving Tia flustered as Roge watches his student's temper flare. Mordred eggs them on, hoping for some pre-dinner entertainment. Talk about a supportive colleague. Roge watches the captain, trying to get a read on the kingdom's supposed strongest mage. But they're not alone, as a cloaked figure observes from the shadows, intrigued by Tia's magic. The mysterious observer keeps their distance, their motives completely unknown. Elsewhere, another spectator wonders who would win in a fight between the two powerful mages. Roge's students debate the outcome, agreeing that titles mean nothing when it comes to true skill. One of Roge's students explains that a mage's path is defined by their unique mana. He notes that Lilianne's potential allows her to use a wide variety of magic without limits. In contrast, they realize Tia's raw mana is surprisingly low for someone of her rank. But her stern expression makes it clear that raw power isn't everything. Tia declares the match is no contest, offering Lilianne a 2-minute handicap. The terms are simple. If Lilianne can block her attack, Tia will acknowledge her strength. With a casual flick of her staff, the kingdom's greatest mage prepares to begin. She instantly summons a massive spectral dragon, its power stunning Lilianne with its speed. Roge's students can only watch in horror as the overwhelming spell materializes. But just as the dragon's breath hits, Lilianne erects an all-attribute barrier to meet it head-on. But Lilianne reinforces her defense, unleashing a powerful Trinity spell to hold the line. She grits her teeth, the sheer force of the attack pushing her to her absolute limit. The students recognize the S-rank spell, fearing Lilianne's mana will be drained in seconds. But one of them recalls a crucial detail about the kingdom's greatest mage. He remembers hearing Tia evacuated an entire region, a feat that should be impossible with her mana levels. The others realize her strength isn't from raw potential, but from decades of relentless refinement. With a final explosive crack, Lilianne's barrier shatters into 1,000,000 pieces. Tia seems impressed, but she's far from finished with her demonstration. She unleashes a new spell, summoning 4 different elemental magic circles at once. Talk about multitasking. Lilianne stares in disbelief, stunned that anyone could wield so many attributes simultaneously. The elemental spells converge, a relentless barrage of pure, overwhelming power. The students can't believe the speed, realizing this is a whole different level of combat. Lilianne fires back with a concentrated blast of light, meeting the assault head-on. But Tia just smirks, warning her that destroying one spell won't stop the storm. Lilianne strains against the onslaught, her own magic barely holding its ground. Tia reveals her secret. She honed her skills to perfection, overcoming her low mana potential through sheer efficiency. The students realize she's achieved a level of control that's only been theorized, a feat requiring unimaginable training. The relic chimes in, confirming that Tia's power comes from one simple thing. It was nothing more than pure, unadulterated, straightforward effort. She silenced everyone who ever doubted her, and now she's come to silence Lilianne. Her words are a direct challenge to Lilianne, and even to Raj. She declares that her refined skill makes her superior to anyone who relies on raw power. Even Ekaterina admits Lilianne is fighting well, but predicts she'll eventually be overwhelmed. The relic points out that Tia's level of control is so precise, she could likely decipher ancient grimoires. Roge realizes that his rival was once on the verge of following in his own footsteps. Just then, Patrice arrives, drawn by the commotion of the duel. He explains that while Tia mastered the theory of ancient magic, she lacked the mana to wield it. Roge listens intently, finally understanding the source of her deep-seated frustration. For all her skill, Tia was born with a limitation she could never overcome through effort alone. With a manic grin, Tia taunts Lilianne, reminding her that time is running out. Tia mocks Lilianne, questioning if she can even find an opening to fight back. But Lilianne has a trump card, unleashing a powerful ancient magic spell. The sudden surge of power leaves Tia completely stunned. Roge's students can't believe it, wondering if she's mastered the lost art. The relic clarifies that this is her very first attempt, making the feat even more impressive. Tia quickly throws up a defensive barrier, preparing for a massive impact. But her eyes widen again as she realizes something is wrong. The ancient magic isn't a direct attack, but a diversion. A simple C-rank icicle spell materializes right in front of her, a complete surprise. Lilianne smirks, revealing she can cast 2 spells at once, a trick Tia never saw coming. The icicle hangs in the air as Tia points out that the 2 minutes are officially up. Lilianne stands her ground as the Saraphim reluctantly concedes the point. But she offers one final test, a newly perfected spell to show her respect. Lilianne is completely caught off guard by the sudden escalation of their duel. Tia raises her staff, unleashing a spell with a rather ominous name, Meteor Impact. A strange hum fills the air, but on the ground nothing seems to change. The students look around, completely baffled by the lack of an immediate attack. But one of them realizes the threat isn't coming from in front of them. High above, a single point of light appears in the darkening sky. The students' faces drain of color as they realize she's summoned an actual meteorite. Well, that's one way to end an argument. The meteorite screams through the atmosphere as Tia challenges Lilianne to stop it. Mordred casually offers to step in if she fails, a very relaxed offer for an extinction-level event. Patrice panics, screaming that this is treason, while the students agree this is way worse than a golem attack. Roge tries to intervene, but Ekaterina physically holds him back. She reminds him that Lilianne is fighting to defend his honor. Ekaterina's words hit home, forcing Roge to question his protective instincts. He realizes his immediate impulse is always to shield her from harm. But he understands this is a battle she must fight on her own. Lilianne admits to herself that she's no match for the kingdom's greatest mage. But despite the impossible odds, she raises her staff, ready to face the heavens. She knows she needs her highest level magic to even stand a chance. A celestial archer of pure light materializes, drawing back a divine arrow. The golden bolt streaks toward the heavens, a spear aimed at the falling star. It strikes the meteorite with a deafening explosion, shattering it high above the capital. Tia watches a single fragment fall, her expression unreadable behind her shield. Roge's students can only stare in disbelief at the sheer power Lilianne just unleashed. But the effort has left Lilianne trembling, completely drained of her energy. Panting and exhausted, she admits she's reached her limit and concedes defeat. Tia warns her to never speak so disrespectfully again, now that she's seen her power. But Lilianne's response is a deep, sincere bow, apologizing for her rudeness. Well, that's not the reaction Tia was expecting. She admits Tia's words hit home because they were painfully true. But the duel taught her that what truly matters is being satisfied with her own strength. With a newfound fire in her eyes, she asks to become Tia's student. Tia completely short-circuits, trying to flee from her new, overly eager admirer. Patrice notes that for all her complaining, she doesn't seem to hate the idea. Roge can only watch the chaotic scene with a proud, knowing smile. From a distance, the cloaked figure observes the aftermath of the duel in silence. The next morning, a pained groan echoes through the halls of their quarters. Roge learns a valuable lesson. Even a great sage can't handle an all-you-can-eat buffet. His student greets him, and Roge explains that Lilianne has already left for the Mage Corps. He explains Lilianne is now helping the Mage Corps with a ghost investigation. With the day off, his other student decides to tag along with his master. Roge reveals his plan, to research nanomachines in the Forbidden Library. They walk through the capital under a dull, overcast sky. Their quiet day is interrupted by a noble accusing a fortune teller of causing a ghost panic. The noble continues his tirade, claiming the man must be an outsider. A bystander explains the noble is a known troublemaker who just picked a random target. As his student watches the unfortunate scene, Roge decides it's time to intervene. He calmly approaches the angry noble, getting his immediate attention. But it's the fortune teller's companion who recognizes him, outing the great sage to the entire crowd. Well, so much for a low profile. The noble scoffs at his title, declaring a sage is still just a commoner. But Roge's assessment is correct. The fortune teller lacks the power for such a feat. The man admits he gave up on magic years ago due to his own limitations. Cornered by logic, the noble resorts to baseless accusations of greed. Roge recalls the man's companion never actually claimed to be a fortune teller. Lauda steps in, calling out the noble for jumping to conclusions without proof. The noble is taken aback, sputtering as he tries to place the young man's face. Laud proudly reveals his identity as the son of the Earl of Humberstone. The noble makes a hasty retreat, his argument completely falling apart. Guess titles do matter after all. The fortune teller gratefully thanks them for their timely intervention. The man introduces himself as Telling, a traveling fortune teller, and offers them tea as thanks. Over their drinks, Telling confirms Roge's suspicions. The miasma feels ancient. Roge warns him to be careful on his journey, a sentiment the fortune teller appreciates. Believing their meeting was fated, Roge decides to offer the man a parting gift. He presents Telling with a magic card, a powerful tool for communication and defense. Roge explains he had a spare, and that the roads are too dangerous to travel alone. The man is moved by the gesture, promising to call if he ever finds himself in trouble. Laud can't help but tease his master for his kindness, much to Roge's flustered denial. But as he accepts the gift, Telling offers a cryptic warning. Endless love can lead to ruin. The ominous words hang in the air, leaving Rudge and his student to ponder their meaning. As a final thank you, Telling offers to demonstrate one of his fortune-telling techniques. Rudge is impressed, recognizing the rare art of astrology magic on sight. The man's prophecy is grim, speaking of an ancient evil that will test Rudge and Lilianne's bond. He warns that a time will come when the sage must make a fateful, impossible choice. Telling downplays the ominous reading, while Lauda eagerly asks for his own fortune. The fortune-teller's advice is surprisingly on point, calling out the young man's hasty nature. But as they talk, the relic on Rudge's hip silently observes the exchange. It senses a strange, nostalgic magic emanating from the fortune-teller. With their business concluded, Rudge and his student bid the mysterious travelers farewell. Telling watches them leave with a knowing smile, his purpose seemingly fulfilled. Meanwhile, Constanze's master watches from the shadows, his expression cold and calculating. He gives his subordinate a final, chilling encouragement for her deadly mission. Constanze watches Bernard's medical team from the trees, her orders echoing in her mind. She recalls his words, "When the time comes to kill, there can be no hesitation." Elsewhere, Bernard's team arrives at a village ravaged by a monster attack. Amidst the chaos, a lone, traumatized girl sits in stunned silence. Bernard approaches her gently, offering a drink and a kind word. He kneels down, asking the question no one ever wants to hear. Where are her parents? Without a word, the little girl simply points toward the makeshift morgue. The answer is a heartbreaking row of bodies, her family lost in the attack. Bernard can only stare, the silence speaking volumes about the tragedy before him. A memory surfaces of a younger Constanze, and a simple apology offered in comfort. He remembers her looking up at him, a flicker of trust in her green eyes. Back in the present, his expression hardens with a grim determination. The memory is a painful reminder of the childhood friend he's now forced to hunt. Later, his team reports their search for Constanze has yielded no results. Just as Bernard agrees to call for backup, a voice cuts through the trees telling them not to bother. His eyes widen in sudden, dawning horror. He whips around, already dreading who he's about to see. It's Constanze standing over his fallen comrades, her betrayal now complete. Bernard lies defeated, thanking his friend for everything she's done for him. Back in the capital, Lauda is startled as a golden magic circle suddenly appears. Rudge recognizes the signal immediately. It's the distress call from Bernard's magic card. Without a moment's hesitation, Lauda declares he's going to help his captain. The other students immediately volunteer, offering their combat and healing skills for the rescue. Rudge considers their pleas, weighing the danger against their fierce determination. Meanwhile, Bernard writhes in agony, the miasma's poison coursing through his veins. Constanze watches him suffer, realizing the miasma is destroying her own magic as well. With a look of pained resolve, she bids her childhood friend a final, chilling farewell. He can only grit his teeth and whisper her name as the darkness begins to take him. But just as she turns to leave, Constanze is stunned by an unexpected arrival. Rudge and his students appear through the trees, demanding to know if Bernard is all right. They find a scene of devastation, with Bernard's entire team unconscious from magical exhaustion. The young healer looks to her master, waiting for his command as he assesses the situation. Rudge spots the lingering traces of dark energy, realizing this was all a trap to lure them in. He tells his student to handle first aid, declaring he's going to follow the trail alone. His expression is grim, his focus now solely on tracking down the one responsible. But a weakened Bernard calls out, warning him that Constanze is using the miasma to hide her magic. He insists that she's not herself, desperately pleading that something must have happened to her. Rudge takes the warning to heart, promising to be careful as he prepares to face the rogue agent. Back at the camp, a desperate Bernard begs Lauda to lend him his mana. Meanwhile, Rudge and Lilianne race through the forest, hot on Constanze's trail. As they fly, the relic on Rudge's hip suddenly chimes in with a thought. It points out a strange similarity between the miasma and the nanomachines from his research. The relic explains the magic signature from the miasma is identical to the one from the Cyclops. The realization stops them in their tracks, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Just ahead, they spot Constanze standing alone in a clearing, shrouded in dark energy. She turns to face them, offering a calm greeting that feels completely out of place. Well, this is an awkward reunion. Lilianne wastes no time demanding to know why she betrayed Bernard and the medical corps. But Constanze's answer is cryptic, simply saying she had her reasons for the attack. But Constanze suddenly cries out, clutching her head in agony. A sinister voice echoes in her mind, scolding her for failing her mission. The miasma erupts around her head as she screams, begging for forgiveness. Rouge and Lilianne can only watch, wondering who she could possibly be talking to. The relic reveals the horrifying truth. Nanomachines are eroding her very mind. It recalls a memory from its data of another who used nanomachines in this way. The face of her master appears, a man with a cold, calculating smile. So this is the guy pulling the strings. Her eyes snap open, glowing a menacing red as she falls completely under his control. With a manic grin, she lunges forward, ready to finish the job her master started. She moves with blinding speed, unleashing 2 powerful spells without even a wand. Rouge throws up a desperate barrier, knowing he can't afford a single mistake. But Constanzi's miasma-fueled punch shatters his defense with contemptuous ease. The sheer force of the impact sends both Rouge and Lilianne flying back. Rouge feels a sharp, phantom pain as if he's just been stabbed. Lilianne steps up to protect her master, unleashing a powerful magna impact. But her spell fizzles out, the magic circle failing to fully deploy. Constanze lets out a chilling, triumphant laugh, her red eyes glowing with madness. She counters with a barrage of spells, her corrupted power on full display. Lilianne can only stare in horror, completely overwhelmed by the relentless assault. Back at the camp, a recovering Bernard looks on with Laude, sensing the battle's intensity. Laude desperately tries to hold Bernard back, warning him not to be reckless in his condition. In the forest clearing, the dust settles, revealing Rouge and Lilianne on the ground. Rouge rushes to Lilianne's side, who apologizes, confused as to why her magic failed. He realizes with a jolt that his own power feels unstable as well. His mind flashes back to his barrier shattering, wondering how it could have been so weak. Across the field, Constanze stands perfectly still, the calm center of the storm. Rouge looks down, sensing his own magical power is rapidly weakening. Lilianne confirms she feels the same, struggling to control her abilities as Rouge connects the dots. He suddenly recalls the sharp phantom pain he felt just moments before. He finally sees them, transparent needles of pure magic piercing his arm. Well, that's one way to get acupuncture. Constanze confirms their suspicions, mockingly praising her own precise handiwork. She explains the needles block their mana flow, a technique perfected by the nanomachines. With her opponents weakened, she declares the fight over and launches another attack. Rouge and Lilianne desperately leap aside, evading the volley of magical projectiles. He grits his teeth, trapped in a loop. He can't fight back without magic to remove the needles. Constanze taunts him, asking if he now understands the true power he's up against. But Lilianne refuses to give up, telling her master to fall back while she holds the line. She pleads with him to trust her, her eyes burning with a familiar, fiery resolve. Rouge is taken aback by her sudden command, seeing the determination in her face. Lilianne channels her power, recalling her recent brutal training with Tia on mana efficiency. She grits her teeth, focusing every ounce of her being into a single desperate gambit. Constanze senses the shift in mana, realizing her opponent is preparing a counterattack. But her real target is Rouge, who realizes his escape has been completely anticipated. He struggles to cast a defensive spell, his blocked mana flow making him far too slow. Just as she moves to strike, Constanze is thrown off balance by a sudden unseen impact. Rouge can only stare in shock, completely baffled by the unexpected turn of events. From the edge of the forest, Bernard and Laude emerge as unlikely reinforcements. Bernard reveals he's using a technique he taught her, turning her own lessons against her. Constanze can only scowl, her perfect plan now completely ruined by her old friend. Seeing her chance, Lilianne's eyes blaze with renewed focus, ready to seize the moment. Lilianne unleashes her spell, summoning a glowing cat doll. Well, Magnetic Maid is certainly a choice. The doll acts as a powerful magnet, pulling the corrupted energy from the air. Laude watches in shock as the needles are drawn out, while Bernard explains the doll's function. With the path cleared, Lilianne screams for her master to make his move. Rouge feels his power return, proud of how much his student has grown. He unleashes an ancient spell, absorbing the nanomachines that have corrupted Constanze. The shadowy master realizes his puppet is compromised and decides it's time for a tactical retreat. A memory surfaces of Bernard discussing his decision to take in a young Constanze. The young girl reveals her parents were terrible people, telling him not to pity her. She tells him he doesn't need to force his kindness, then cryptically calls him the one who is mistaken. He explains his duty as a doctor was simple, to help those in need. His words leave a deep impression on the young, stoic girl. She even dared to dream of following in his footsteps one day. But her own memories are filled with violence and a desperate plea for life. She recalls her master's cold command: kill everyone, leave no trace. A voice in her head screams at her, demanding she not hesitate. Back in the present, she resists, her true self fighting the control. But the master's will is absolute, a single overriding command to kill. The horrifying order sends a wave of pure terror through her. She awakens later, chained to a bed, her deadly mission a failure. Constanze awakens, disoriented and restrained by magical chains. A familiar voice calls out to her, and she sees Bernard watching over her. She whispers his name, the weight of her actions slowly returning. His expression is weary, but there's a profound sense of relief in his eyes. The guilt becomes too much to bear as she stammers out an apology. Tears of remorse stream down her face, horrified by what she's done. But Bernard cuts her off with a gentle smile, telling her it's okay.
He assures her that all that matters is that she survived the ordeal.
Elsewhere, Lilianne reports on the ghost investigation she was assigned to. While she couldn't capture it, she managed to secure a sample of its energy. Raj confirms the ghost energy is identical to the spreading miasma. A purple-haired Saraphim connects the dots, realizing Constanze was brainwashed. Her expression hardens as she concludes that humans are behind the attacks. She speculates they could be foreign spies targeting the kingdom's ancient weapons. With a huff, she declares it's time for the Seraphim to get back to their posts. Roj can only watch her storm off, another day, another dramatic colleague. Just then, a weary but relieved Bernard appears in the doorway. Roj asks about Constanze, and Bernard confirms she's awake but will face interrogation. Roj can't help but feel sorry for her, knowing the circumstances that led her here. But Bernard warns him not to get his hopes up. She doesn't seem to remember a thing. Bernard reveals the other medics were found alive, a fact he credits to Constanze's resistance. Roj promises to plead with the king, hoping to secure a lenient sentence for her. He realizes controlling a brain with nanomachines is beyond human skill. The relic chimes in, naming a suspect from the distant past, the ancient evangelist Sattoru. Bernard questions this, recalling that Sattoru was supposedly executed for his crimes. The relic explains that unlike the powerful Akira, Sattoru was a cautious and intelligent mage. It confirms he was the only one capable of using such complex nanomachines. Roja theorizes that Sattoru, like Akira, may have left behind a will of his own. Bernard concludes that only Roj, with Akira's power, could possibly stand against such a foe. But their grim discussion is cut short by a sudden, loud noise from outside. A sudden cry for Lilianne snaps both Roj and Bernard to attention. He throws open the door, demanding to know what's happening. But what he sees freezes him in place, a look of pure shock on his face. Lilianne is completely engulfed by a swirling vortex of dark miasma. She struggles against the shadowy tendrils, her muffled cries lost in the chaos. The sage's shock instantly turns to a cold, focused rage. He unleashes a torrent of holy magic, blasting the darkness away from his student. The miasma coalesces into a single, shadowy entity, cackling with amusement. Bernard can only stare in disbelief, wondering what kind of creature this is. The entity calmly reveals it's the source of the ghost panic, and it's finally decided to show itself. Roj glares, realizing this is the soul of the miasma, the one who corrupted Constanze. The entity assures him Lilianne is safe, revealing its true, sinister plan. It's been waiting for this moment, unleashing miasma-born beasts across the entire capital. The city streets erupt into chaos as monstrous creatures attack the royal guard. A lone warrior stands his ground, his eyes burning with defiance. Elsewhere, a tattooed man watches the destruction with a gleeful, unsettling grin. He sits above the fray, a spectator to the kingdom's potential downfall. Looks like someone brought popcorn to the apocalypse. Meanwhile, in the throne room, King Sieg looks on with grim authority. A group of mysterious, cloaked figures has requested an audience, and he demands their purpose. Their answer is chilling. They've come to destroy the Forbidden Library and its ancient secrets. King Sieg demands to know the motive behind their insane request. The cloaked figure echoes his question, its voice dripping with contempt. It claims the kingdom has forgotten its history, wasting lives on worthless ideals. The entity taunts Roj, telling him to calm down, intrigued by his connection to Akira. Roj can only stare, completely baffled by the creature's cryptic words. Without warning, the entity unleashes a powerful binding spell, aiming to trap the sage. But a sudden bolt of lightning shatters the magical chains before they can connect. Roge looks up in shock, recognizing the source of the unexpected rescue. It's Tia, arriving on the scene with perfect dramatic timing, as usual. The entity scoffs, annoyed that the one person who could capture it has appeared. The shadowy creature recoils, surprised by the sudden interference. But its annoyance is fleeting, quickly replaced by a dismissive calm. It reveals its true business is with Roge, and it's using a familiar magic card. The entity presents Roge with an impossible choice: save Lilianne or save the kingdom. Meanwhile, the cloaked figure in the throne room mocks King Sieg's authority. But the king is unfazed, vowing to fulfill his duty no matter the cost. He draws his blade, ready to defend his kingdom's honor to the very end. Back in the infirmary, Tia barks orders, telling Bernard and Constanze to get up. No time for rest when the world is ending. Mordred receives a grim report. The capital is under attack by ancient demonic beasts. These aren't just any monsters. They're enhanced by nanomachines, a threat from a bygone era. With the capital in chaos, the mages prepare to move out. But another golden magic circle suddenly materializes before Roge. The purple-haired Saraphim demands an explanation, and Roge reveals the signal's source. She can only stare, completely baffled by his deduction. He urges her to destroy the entity, but his own path is far less clear. He struggles to think, knowing one wrong move could cost him everything. He can't trust the creature's word, but time is rapidly running out, and all the while Lilianne remains a prisoner of the encroaching darkness. The weight of the impossible choice begins to crush him, so the Seraphim resorts to a more direct method of motivation. Roge is taken aback, asking if she doubts the kingdom's ability to defend itself. But the Seraphim unleashes her fury, telling him his arrogance is infuriating. She accuses him of being too proud to rely on others, insulting both them and Lilianne. Mordred tries to calm her down, but she insists she's only speaking the truth. She admits that she accepts Roge's power is beyond her own comprehension, but as Roge listens, she prepares to deliver her final cutting point. She claims his desire to handle everything alone tramples on their pride and effort. She then delivers a chilling ultimatum: abandon his duty and she'll kill Lilianne herself. Well, that's one way to build team morale. The threat hits its mark, and Roge's expression hardens with resolve. With a simple "I'm going," he makes his choice, leaving the relic to process the chaos. The Seraphim turns away, entrusting the capital's defense to her comrades. But Roge won't be going alone. Bernard declares he's coming with him. As a teleportation circle ignites, Roge reflects on his own deep-seated loneliness. He finally admits he never considered the possibility of relying on others. Elsewhere, the tattooed man faces a lone warrior who demands to know his objective. He grins, explaining this isn't an organized rebellion, just a temporary alliance. He declares the kingdom is finished, an offer the knight isn't exactly thrilled about. Because their true enemy, he reveals with a chilling smile, are the evangelists. But the warrior stands her ground, vowing to protect her home no matter the foe. All the while, Lilianne remains trapped, a pained groan escaping her lips. She awakens on a cold stone floor, disoriented and weak. Lilianne finds herself in a vast, empty hall, completely alone. The lingering effects of the miasma leave her feeling drained and powerless. She looks down to see dark tendrils wrapped around her arm, siphoning her mana. She tries to focus, to gather what little strength she has left. But without her wand, she knows she's not skilled enough to cast complex spells. A calm voice greets her and her eyes snap open in surprise. A man shrouded in miasma stands before her, the source of her capture. She asks if he's another victim, another puppet like Constanze. But he just smiles, revealing he's the mastermind behind all the chaos. He admits he introduced himself as Telling, but now he'll reveal his true name. His name is Sattoru, one of the evangelists who descended 2 millennia ago. He then asks for her assistance with his inspection, a clear and chilling threat. Meanwhile, Roge follows the signal, arriving in a desolate, rocky canyon. He finds the shattered remains of the magic card he gave away. It's the very same one he gave to Telling, confirming this was all a setup. The relic on his hip points out a strange gate hidden in the mountainside. Roge looks up to find a massive door of ancient, forgotten technology. The relic confirms it's made of the same material, a remnant of Sattoru's civilization. Without warning, the massive doors slide open, beckoning him inside. Roge steps inside, noting the lack of barriers and deciding to proceed with caution. He's immediately forced to dodge as a figure drops down from above, ready for a fight. Elsewhere, Lilianne questions Sattoru's identity, struggling to believe he's the ancient evangelist. Sattoru calmly tells her not to worry about the details, dismissing his own history as trivial. He assures her he just wants to talk, but Lilianne recalls that Sattoru was supposedly executed. The ancient mage admits that's what the history books say, a fact he finds deeply disappointing.
He begins to tell the tale of two children who descended upon the world 2 millennia ago, Akira and Sattoru.
He explains that Akira was a benevolent hero, while his own ideology was fundamentally different. The official story claims Sattoru turned against the people and was eventually executed for his crimes. Akira then sealed away the most dangerous weapons, leaving his legacy to the royal family. History is written by the victors after all. Sattoru scoffs, calling the official history a ridiculous insult to them both. He reveals they were once just children who loved to learn and gather knowledge. But their genius was exploited to create weapons, and they were killed when they became inconvenient. He recalls the moment he awoke in this strange new world. Lying in a field, he stared up at an unfamiliar sky. A familiar voice called out to him, and he turned to see Akira. His friend was there beside him, just as lost and confused as he was. The two boys lay in the grass, their bond unbroken even after death. Against all odds, they realized they were alive once more. They had been reincarnated into a primitive world, but one that held an incredible secret: magic. Sattoru explains their dynamic. Akira had raw power while he had precise control. As they traveled, their fame grew, eventually earning them an invitation to the castle. Sattoru recalls his excitement, believing the kingdom's resources could finally create their nanomachines. He discovered the nature of miasma, seeing its potential for weapon development. But Akira questioned his friend's obsession with creating weapons. He urged Sattoru to let go of the past and simply enjoy their new lives. Sattoru listened, his own ambitions simmering beneath the surface. Akira dreamed of becoming a great magician who could save everyone. A noble goal, if a bit naive. But Satoru's eyes held a different, colder ambition. He agreed on the surface, but his true thoughts were a dark secret. He reveals his true desire: to gain enough power to protect their lives. As time passed, Akira used his magic generously, finding joy in helping others. The simple gratitude of the people was all the reward he ever needed. Meanwhile, Sattoru continued his own research, preparing to protect his friend. He was playing the long game, his intentions hidden behind a calm facade. But Akira's generosity came at a cost. His constant use of magic was draining him. Sattoru learned that his friend was suffering from chronic mana exhaustion. He went before the king, pleading for Akira to be given time to rest and recover. But the king's response was not what he expected, his tone cold and dismissive. He declared that as mages of the king, their power was his to spend as he saw fit. What a great boss. The king reveals his true ambition: to use Akira's power for world domination. He cruelly reminds Sattoru that he owes his entire position to his friend's talent. Defeated and dismissed, Sattoru walks away down the empty castle hall. He stops at a doorway, his expression hardening with a quiet, simmering anger. Inside, he finds Akira, who should be resting, diligently writing in a book. Akira greets him cheerfully, but Sattoru is frantic with worry for his friend's health. But Akira just smiles, proudly showing off his latest project, a grimoire. He explains the king requested it, a way to pass his magic on to future generations. The grim reality dawns on Sattoru. Akira knows he's dying. As Sattoru thinks of how his own research could save him, he makes a desperate plea: they must leave this kingdom. But Akira is confused, asking why they would ever leave. Sattoru lays out the cold, hard truth: the king is using them as tools for conquest. He points out this is exactly what happened to them in their previous life. But Akira argues that for the first time, he feels truly loved by the people. With tears in his eyes, he clutches the grimoire, refusing to abandon the country he's grown to love. Sattoru can only watch, his heart breaking for his friend's misplaced loyalty. Satoru's story takes a dark turn. Akira died just 2 weeks later. Sent to the front lines, the final battle drained the last of his life force. Satoru's rage explodes, disgusted that corrupt rulers would use his friend's legacy for their own gain. He then made a vow: his nanomachines would watch, and if Akira's magic was ever misused, he would return. He delivered a chilling ultimatum: touch Akira's legacy and he would burn the kingdom to the ground. With his threat delivered, he used his nanomachines to enter a long, patient slumber. He scoffs at how the kingdom, shamed by his threat, rewrote history to make him the villain. In the aftermath, the king's advisor fretted over the kingdom's new vulnerability. But the king only saw their legacy as a weapon, a resource to be hoarded and controlled. Sattoru admits that grand concepts like peace and technology meant nothing to him. His true desire was something far simpler, embodied by Akira's bright smile. All he ever wanted was to live a quiet life, laughing alongside his only friend. But Akira chose to love a country that would only exploit him, even after his death. And now, 2 millennia later, he sees that same legacy being tarnished once more. Sattoru's rage solidifies into a cold, final decision. He declares the people of Dolga have broken their promise to him. Lilianne defends her master, but Sattoru reveals he's been watching them. He lists their deeds, admitting Roge is a good man, but a naive one. He has no trust for a kingdom that rewrites history and forgets its heroes. The thought of Akira's legacy in the hands of the unworthy fills him with fury. He declares his mission to reclaim his friend's stolen dignity. But Lilianne refuses to accept his version of the story. Guess he didn't expect a debate from his hostage. She argues that Akira chose his path freely, protecting what he loved. She insists Akira's goal was to build a future, not to be a weapon. Sattoru coldly dismisses her argument, claiming she has no right to an opinion. He reveals the true purpose of his story, to make her mind vulnerable to his nanomachines. Lilianne's eyes widen in horror as she realizes she's being psychologically broken down. Meanwhile, Roge races through an ancient metallic corridor, determined to reach her. The relic suggests the endless hallway is an illusion, urging a moment of caution. But Roge's analysis is cut short by a sudden, approaching threat. Monstrous beasts materialize from thin air, blocking his path with crackling energy. Roge grits his teeth, realizing he can't just speedrun his way to the final boss. He unleashes a powerful blast of light, incinerating the creatures in a single decisive strike. With the path cleared, he presses forward, his resolve completely unshaken. Roge blazes past a terrified figure, not even breaking his stride. The man can't believe it, wondering how his monster traps were destroyed so instantly. He panics, realizing failure means death at the hands of his new boss, Sattoru. His real plan was to betray Sattoru and steal an ancient weapon for himself. But his scheming is cut short as Roge appears right behind him, asking about the traps. The man hits the deck, stammering out a pathetic excuse about being a hostage. Roge isn't buying it for a second, calling him out for his obvious greed. He asks the relic how he knew, and it bluntly replies it was written all over the guy's face. Well, so much for subtlety, but the man's fear is quickly replaced by avarice as he spots the ancient relic. He unleashes his trump card, a bounty bomb, hoping to take down the sage. Roge interrogates his new upside-down captive, demanding to know where Lilianne is. The man realizes he's completely outmatched, already plotting his next double cross. But Roge has no time for games, and his impatience quickly breaks the man's resolve. The relic calls out his sudden change of heart, much to the man's comical frustration. He tries to bargain, offering to sell out his boss for the right price. But Roge isn't interested in making a deal and simply turns to leave. He coldly reminds the man that he's in a hurry, leaving no room for negotiation. With all his leverage gone, the man finally cracks, begging for his life. Guess that's Plan C. He reveals the name of his master, the ancient evangelist, Sattoru. The man confirms he's seen Sattoru using the very nanomachines Roge has been researching. But the man suddenly cries out, dark energy erupting around him. He clutches his head, screaming in agony as the miasma consumes him. Roge recognizes the symptoms immediately, the same ones from Volcano village. The man realizes Sattoru's nanomachines are punishing him for his betrayal. But Roge intervenes, casting a spell to absorb the corrupted nanomachines. The traitor can only watch in tearful disbelief as the pain subsides. With a simple healing spell, Roge frees him from his bonds completely. Without another word, Roge turns to continue his search, leaving the man behind. But the man calls out, and Roge turns back, his patience wearing thin. He asks why he was saved, and Roge simply states he holds no grudge. Guess he's just a really forgiving guy. The man is baffled, asking why Roge would spare someone who could just attack him again. Roge's simple reply that he'd just fight back leaves the traitor completely stunned. His mind flashes back, recalling a life where mercy was a weakness to be exploited. He remembers a past filled with violence, where survival meant taking what you could, a time when kindness was a foreign concept and every day was a fight for his life. Overwhelmed by a compassion he's never known, the man finally chooses a new path. He reveals the truth. This entire facility is a massive illusion, a trap with no exit. More importantly, Lilianne isn't here. He offers Roge the real coordinates to her location. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Sattoru's promised destruction has already begun. Tia is on the front lines, barking orders and trying to evacuate the citizens amidst the chaos. A soldier delivers a frantic report. The knights are being overwhelmed by an endless horde. Tia listens, annoyed by the news that the monsters seem to be spawning infinitely. With the capital burning, there's no room for hesitation. She gives a chilling order. Tell the knights to hold their ground until the very end. Her expression is grim, the weight of her command settling heavily upon her. Back in the illusionary facility, Raj prepares to teleport using the new coordinates. But the traitor he spared stops him, reflecting on a life where he was never loved. He admits he's only ever fought for himself, questioning Roj's desperate rush. He asks if it's a sage's sense of justice that drives him to care so much for another. Or, he wonders, is it love that's pushing him to go this far for his student? A memory of Lilianne's bright, trusting smile flashes through his mind. Roj keeps his head down, his answer coming from a place of deep pain. The traitor admits he doesn't even understand the concept of love. Roj simply says he's tired of hating the person he's become. For once, the relic is completely silent, processing the raw honesty. As Raj vanishes in a flash of light, the man scoffs at his futile struggle. Elsewhere, a cloaked figure is lost in self-loathing, wondering if they'll ever find peace. Back in the capital, the chaos continues as a crystalline monster charges forward. The tattooed man taunts his opponent, a knight commander fighting a losing battle. But the red-haired warrior stands unbroken, channeling a mysterious blue power. She channels a strange blue energy, preparing to unleash a powerful strike. The tattooed man reveals his secret. He's a beast tamer, using monsters as his army. The knight commander's expression is grim as he taunts her about the losing battle. High above the burning city, Tia surveys the widespread destruction. She struggles to comprehend how an infinite number of ancient beasts is even possible. But she knows there must be a trick. No one has limitless magical power. Her eyes narrow, her mind racing to find the source of the endless horde. Meanwhile, a lone clock tower stands amidst the flames, a silent witness to the chaos. From a nearby rooftop, a small girl observes the battle with surprising calm. Looks like we found the raid boss. She prepares another spell, deciding to copy the remaining beast to continue the assault. But the rooftop observer suddenly senses a change in the air. A massive blast of purple energy erupts from below, engulfing the clock tower. It's Tia floating above the city, her patience clearly at its end. The girl is shaken, realizing she only survived because the attack hit a copy of herself. She's baffled that such a powerful spell left the clock tower completely unscathed. She then makes a fatal error, dismissing Tia as a low-ranking mage. You just had to open your mouth, didn't you? But Tia hears every word, her expression turning deadly serious. The insult sends her into a blind rage, furious at being underestimated. Meanwhile, Raj arrives at the new coordinates, teleporting into a vast, empty chamber. The relic immediately points the way, guiding him deeper into the enemy's lair. He spots her wand lying on the cold stone floor and screams her name. Rushing to her side, he frantically checks to see if she's okay. Lilianne slowly begins to stir, her voice barely a whisper. A wave of pure relief washes over Roj as he sees she's unharmed. But a calm voice cuts through the silence, calling out his name. Roj looks up, recognizing the man he once knew as Telling. He corrects himself, now knowing the man's true identity, the ancient evangelist. Sattoru calmly acknowledges that Roj has finally put the pieces together. He correctly guesses that Gilles, the traitor, must have spilled the beans. Well, that guy's loyalty didn't last long. Satoru's voice echoes as he prepares to reintroduce himself properly. He formally introduces himself as Sattoru, one of the ancient evangelists. The relic confirms his identity, wondering how he could have survived for so long. Sattoru boasts about his nanomachines, a perfect fusion of science and magic. He explains his goal was to create magic that didn't require mana at all. But Raj changes the subject, asking about the strange device on his hip. Sattoru correctly identifies it as an ancient relic, clearly not of this era. Roj finds it strange that Sattoru doesn't recognize his own era's technology. The realization dawns on him. It must be a legacy left by Akira. The relic explains it serves Roj now, a choice Sattoru finds typical of his old friend. Sattoru simply declares he'll destroy it, proving that even ancient AIs have a survival instinct. Sattoru reveals his chilling goal, to erase all traces of ancient magic. Roj realizes this means destroying the entire country, but Sattoru's threat is far more personal. The sheer murderous intent radiating from the evangelist is enough to make Raj break a sweat. He grips his staff, trapped between the need to fight and the fear of the battle ahead. He questions if he even has the power to stand against a being of Sattoru's caliber. But a familiar voice cuts through his doubt, pulling him back to the present. Lilianne struggles to her feet, wand in hand, ready to defend her master. Sattoru watches with a faint smile, noting how much Raj reminds him of Akira. Raj immediately tells her to stand down, urging her to teleport to safety. But Sattoru interrupts, posing a question that hangs heavy in the air. Raj can only stare, calling out her name in complete disbelief. Satoru's voice cuts in, his interest piqued by the boy's unwavering resolve. The scene flashes back to a much younger Roj, his face set with fierce determination. He's practicing magic from a book, a memory from his humble beginnings. Satoru's narration turns dark, wondering if he should have stolen Akira's legacy sooner. The story shifts to Roj's past, recalling how he found a magician's discarded autobiography. The book sparked his imagination, opening his eyes to the possibilities of magic. Back then, he was just a poor boy, often skipping his duties to visit the academy. He would run through the streets, clutching the book, ignoring the doubts of those around him. He explains that in his youth, being a mage was an unpopular and difficult path. He recalls that a mage's power was believed to decline with age, forcing most to retire by 30. The kingdom of Dolga had a shallow history of magic, with little knowledge compared to other nations. Their only magic academy was barely scraping by, propped up by foreign support. Inside, the privileged learned, destined for the Royal Mage Corps, a world away from a poor commoner. But even so, the young boy couldn't look away, completely captivated by the spectacle. He would practice in secret, the simple joy of casting a spell being its own reward. Years later, he stood before the Royal Mage Corps, hoping to take their entrance exam. But his lack of formal education earned him nothing but scorn from the dismissive examiner. With a final angry shout, the gate was slammed shut in his face. So much for an open-door policy. Rejected and dejected, he realized his only path forward was to join the Adventurers Guild. He knew magic was his only talent, the only path he ever wanted to walk. But the world's judgment echoed in his mind, telling him to stay in his place. He walked away, believing his life was destined for failure and inferiority. Yet somehow, against all odds, he found his way and gained experience as a mage. His life changed forever when he met a young Lilianne, just as he turned 20. The little girl was a prodigy, already conjuring magic circles with surprising ease. He could only stare in shock, amazed by the raw talent of a 5-year-old. He knew she deserved a proper academy, not a self-taught mage like him. Guess imposter syndrome hits even the sages. But as a struggling adventurer, he could never afford the tuition for her incredible gift. He couldn't help but wonder if she would have been happier if he'd never met her. He's pulled from his thoughts by Lilianne's curious gaze, a reminder of the life he's built. But his past was far from peaceful, marked by the arrival of mysterious, cloaked men. They appeared at his door one night, their intentions shrouded in secrecy. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Sieg, introduced himself as the captain of the Royal Knights. He'd heard rumors of a powerful mage and came to see if Roj was the one who'd wiped out a ghoul horde. When Roj confirms it, Sieg's stoic expression breaks into one of pure astonishment. Roj humbly explains it was a simple matter of using the right magic for the job. Just casual sage-level stuff. Sieg cuts to the chase, asking Roj to lend his incredible power to their cause. He reveals the kingdom is rotting from the inside, ruled by a corrupt king and greedy nobles. Roj admits he's been approached by revolutionaries, but refuses to use his magic to hurt people. But Sieg clarifies his goal isn't to subdue the people, but to save the entire country. He explains they must channel the inevitable chaos into a coup to overthrow the corrupt state. Raj is floored, realizing the Royal Knights themselves are planning a rebellion. Sieg then reveals his true identity, Sieg Dolga, the legitimate heir to the throne. Well, that certainly explains the dramatic entrance. He grabs Roj, desperately pleading for his help in the coming revolution. He insists that only a mage of Roj's caliber can make their plan a success. The weight of the offer leaves our boy completely stunned and speechless. Thinking of Lilianne, Roj agrees, but only if Sieg promises a bloodless revolution. He adds one more personal condition, that if they succeed, Lilianne can finally attend school. And so it was. The kingdom under King Sieg became a true meritocracy, where the strong protected the weak. King Sieg stripped the corrupt nobles of their wealth, giving it back to the people. He ensured that everyone, regardless of their station, had the chance to learn. which is why Lilianne's sudden announcement is so shocking. She dropped out. Roj can't believe what he's hearing. He asks why she'd quit, but she says the Academy's teachings are a joke compared to his. She insists he's the better teacher, a compliment that frankly terrifies him. He argues that she needs a proper graduation certificate to overcome the world's prejudice. But she declares her only goal is to become a great mage, just like her master. Her heartfelt confession leaves him completely speechless and blushing. He thinks of her as both his disciple and his daughter, a dazzling presence in his life. He knows she's smart enough to see how pathetic he is, how much he needs her. She is the bright, smiling reason he keeps fighting for a better world. But the girl standing before him now is a cold, empty shell. Roj can only watch in horror, the reality of the situation crashing down. And then, with a cry of his name, his own student strikes him down. Sattoru looms over him, taunting that his precious disciple is gone. He questions Roj's choice, asking where his famed pacifism has gone. By choosing her over the kingdom, he's proven himself unworthy of being a sage. Well, that's a bit harsh for a performance review, but a single tear escapes her eye, a sign of the girl trapped within. Roj can only stare, broken and bleeding, his worst nightmare made real. Sattoru continues his monologue, claiming nations and civilizations mean nothing to him. But Roj's thoughts are his own. He never cared for titles like sage. Sattoru presses him, asking why he'd study Akira's magic if not for power or fame. Roj's answer is simple. He loves magic and he loves his disciple. She was the only reason he ever needed to keep going, and to stand by while she suffers would be to lose the very meaning of his life. The raw conviction in Roj's eyes seems to give Sattoru pause. He's reminded of Akira, who poured that same love into a country that betrayed him. Satoru's confusion turns to disgust, accusing Roj of abandoning his duty for selfish reasons. He looks down on the bleeding sage, unable to comprehend his choice. Talk about a toxic ex-best friend. Roj's gaze hardens, sweat beating on his temple as he finds his resolve. A memory of Lilianne's confession echoes in his mind, a beacon from a brighter time. But the girl before him now speaks with a hollow voice, borrowing words that aren't her own. And with a desperate cry, Roj echoes her words, his own love laid bare in the face of despair.